All right, we are live. Ed, you're muted. Ed, you're muted.
All right, y'all. All right. Welcome to All Politics of Local America's number one political hip hop radio talk show. Y'all know if it's Friday, y'all know it's time for All Politics of Local. So y'all know it's the first Friday of May. So we've got a real action-packed show. John, you can go ahead and give them the rundown for who's up tonight.
Well, tonight we're going to have a really great show. We're going to start off with civil rights legend Mary Frances Berry. Right, she is someone who's worked in the civil rights division under Clinton, under George Bush. She also is someone who was very active in the civil rights movement, and the different players in the civil rights movement is people that she interacted with. She is a historian. She is a historian at the University of Pennsylvania, and she's literally a civil rights icon and legend. And she's going to be the first person we're going to have a wonderful interview for an hour with, as she has a new book that she published, and we are going to be talking about that book and the advice that she can give us for the future as well. There are a lot of things going on, and she will definitely be able to give us some wisdom in that. At 7 o'clock, we're going to have some fun with Dr. Rufus Burnett. He is the author of Decolonizing Revelation, Spatial Reading of the Blues, and he has an expertise on Black theology and music, and he's going to be offering his perspective on Ryan Coogler's Sinners. At 7:30, we're going to have Mona Cadena of Equal Justice USA, Erica Ford of Life Camp, and Pam Johnson of the Jersey City Anti-Violence Coalition movement. And they're going to talk about the effect of the recent federal cuts on their anti-violence work. There's been some groundbreaking anti-violence work that's been done in Newark. Crime has decreased a lot. We're going to have a thorough conversation on what these cuts mean to the work that they've been doing and the work that they're going to continue to do. And then, of course, at 8:30, we have DJ Rhino and the State of Hip Hop coming to you in terms of a full show. And so we're going to start off with our first guest that we are so honored to have, Mary Frances Berry. And she is not here right now. She is just outside of the background. She's trying to come in, but we will have her on very, very soon when she comes back in. But as I said, that she wrote a new book called Slavery After Slavery. And it's interesting because it's revealing the legacy of forced child apprenticeships on Black families from emancipation to present. It's a look at literal kidnappings, like legal kidnappings, if you want to call them that. She says that now they would be called human trafficking. That took place post-slavery, and it's a very timely book when talking about how even after there are levels of civil rights that are given, there's always some level of retrenchment, some level of pushback, and we'll be honored to have her on in this conversation. She was on earlier. She was having some trouble getting on, and hopefully that she will be back on shortly. So Ed, what's up, man?
Well, you tell me, John. I haven't seen you in a month of Sundays, man. You know.
Oh, true. We have not seen each other in a little bit. Yes. Well, have you seen the Sinners movie yet?
I have not.
Got to see it, man. Got to see it.
Did you see it?
I did. I saw it. We'll see it twice. Probably we could see it 3 times. It's a fun movie, but it's also thoughtful. At 7 o'clock, when Rufus Burnett comes on, we're going to have a very good conversation about that. And it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right.
So what else has been up? Well, what's been up with you, man?
Well, listen, man, there's a lot going on, man. It just seems to, this race that's going on here in the state, man, it's getting a little nasty, a little dirty, a little personal, and I don't know if you saw what the mayor said that, he may not vote if he doesn't win the primary. Did you see that?
Oh, I did. And that's because he's trying to basically pressure candidates to look at our interests. So if he wins or if he doesn't win, that interest of urban areas, interest of cities are prioritized. Yes, we have Mary Frances Berry back.
Yes, I don't know. Can you hear me? I don't know what's going on. Maybe
Uh,
the somebody has me under surveillance or something.
maybe. I can hear you very well when you are speaking. When you're not speaking, I will just put you on mute, and I think that will take care of any feedback.
Okay. All right. Sure. I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
Oh no! Look, there's no reason for you to be sorry about anything. We are so honored to have you on today, right? You are a legend, an icon. We have what we have because of the stuff that you did and the work that you have done. So I know Ed is. We are honored to be in your presence.
About the book a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Can we talk about the book?
Yes, we can talk about the book. And one of the things that I have a question about, and the book is called Slavery After Slavery. I'm trying to put it on this so you can get the entire thing. And it's really interesting because it seems like the beginning takes place after slavery, after people are free, and it's about forced child apprenticeships. What is that? What are those?
Okay. Put it simple. After the plantation owners had to free the slaves, the 13th Amendment was passed, they didn't want to give up the free labor. So what they did is they went down to the local judge, probate judge, and said, these children have been left here by their parents and the parents don't want them. So let's make out some indentures and say that they are going to be apprentices on my plantation. The local judge was a friend of theirs because he's a big plantation owners by and large. And what they did is made out a form which said that the parents have given these children to work for this plantation owner freely because they can't take care of them. And then they signed the papers, they kept the kids, they told the parents, you can leave if you want to. We don't care, we're taking the kids. But they only took kids that were old enough to work in the fields. And when I looked at the apprenticeship doctrine, they're supposed to be training the kids for some kind of trade. You may remember that down in Florida, somebody said slavery was good for Black people because we learned something, how to do trades and so on. They were supposed to be teaching them something, but I looked on the indenture papers, and often they said, it said, what kind of trade or work? We'll teach them to pick cotton, or we'll teach them to pick tobacco, which is what they were already doing. And they would keep the kids, and they were supposed to be apprenticeships until they came of age. They only wanted kids between the ages of about 7 or 9 up. They didn't want the toddlers because nobody wanted to have to feed them and take care of them and all the rest of it. They wanted workers. And so it was slavery, as one mother cried when she was put out of the plantation and couldn't take her children. You put in my kids, you're kicking them back into slavery. And so it was slavery after slavery was supposed to be over. And some of the children stayed there until they were grown or they could run away or something. There were about 1 million Black children between the ages of 9 and 21 who were in the 1860 census. We believe that most of those children, if they didn't die or were disabled or something and couldn't work, were in fact apprentices at one time or another. Now, apprenticeships might sound
Wait,
good.
hold on just 1 second. You just said that there were 1 million children on this census, and that of these 1 million Black children, unless they were disabled, then you had close to 1 million children working in fields as slaves after the Civil War.
What I'm telling you, and let's be clear, There were 1 million children between the ages of 9 and 21. That's not all the children. There were 1 million children between the ages of 9 and 21 in that group. So we know, knowing what the slaveholders wanted and what they used and what they did, all of those children were subject at one time or another of being snatched up and kept on the plantation, even though they were supposed to be free. I wrote about some of them in this book. I hope other people will go and trace. They may find some of their own folk in their ancestry to find out all the rest of these children who were subjected to this kind of thing and in living until they were adults and could run away or something. And after that, I traced the ones that I wrote about. But it was slavery after slavery. They weren't paid. They were working at the same plantation most of the time that they were on, or they hired them out to another plantation owner and collected the money from that person. So they were treated, they were slaves, even though they were called apprentices. And this was a phony label that everybody who was involved knew what it was. There's a book that some people may have read called Slavery After Slavery, called Slavery by Another Name, which is about convict leasing. But this is about children who were on the plantation. And some of the parents were able to get their kids back. They got the Freedmen's Bureau to help them. They were able to get the kids back and sometimes keep them. And other times, plantation owner would come and get them if they were anywhere near. I have a case in the book where the plantation owner sent her brother with a shotgun to go get the children back, even though the parents hadn't said anybody could take their children. And the plantation owners would lie too. They would say, these parents say that they're unable to take care of these children, and they have given us permission to keep them. But they were lying, and they sometimes they would claim that the parents had actually signed a paper. And I write in the book that when I checked these things, these parents didn't know how to write in the first place. And they were illiterate because they hadn't been educated. So they just made up things and kept the kids and kept the labor. Now, the interesting thing about this, there's a lot of interesting about it, but one interesting thing about it is Dorothy Roberts, who teaches at Penn and is one of my colleagues, has written all kinds of books. And she has one book called Torn Apart, which is about the child system whereby they take foster kids and put them in foster care today. And if you go down to a family court and you sit there and see what's happening, they say, well, these parents can't take care of these kids. A lot of them are Black and they take their kids. And some foster parents are good, but others are abused children and just want them for the money. Well, she says that the child apprenticeship system is a precursor in history to the whole foster care system of taking kids away from parents, even when they have relatives who can take care of them. That happens nowadays in these courts. You can go down there and sit in the court and watch it happen.
Wow. It is so interesting when you look at the genealogy of institutions that we take for granted now. If you like, when I'm a debate coach in Newark, and we had a topic on the police, on police reform a few years ago, and I didn't know that the original police forces were slave catchers in the United States. They were literally slave patrols, and that is the origin of the police. You're saying that the origin of foster care, or at least with Dorothy Roberts, the other professor that works with you, that it is very feasible that the origin of the foster care system in the United States started with these forced apprenticeships, which would literally kidnap kids from their parents using the excuse that the parent cannot take care of them.
Okay, if we can be clear, what Roberts says and what I'm saying is, we know that there are good foster parents who adopt kids, take care of them, just in foster care. But there are many instances you will see where a parent has been put in jail on drug offenses, or people are poor and they can't take care of their kids, they're homeless or whatever it is. And they are in the family court because of that. And even when they have relatives who are poor but ask for the kids, very often they will give them to foster parents over the objections of the people who are actually their parents or grandparents or whatever. And that's what she meant. And this is what these folks were doing. They were, in fact, ignoring the wishes of the parents. One of the arguments that they would make often is, well, the parents weren't married. You know, they say that they're the parents, but they weren't married. Well, we know that during slavery, Black folk couldn't get married. So to tell somebody that they didn't get married, when in fact they couldn't, it doesn't make any sense, right?
Right, absolutely. What are some of the other stories that you get that you wrote about with respect to some of these cases? Because you wrote about a series of cases of kids who were kidnapped, right? What are some of the ones that stand out that you would want to talk about?
Ones that stand out, most of them, as I said, stayed with, were kept and were not able to get away. But there are some who did get away. One, Boss Maples, ran away, even though they had a court case, which I read and got the information from, where his mother wanted to keep him with her on the plantation to help her take care of the younger kids. And she thought they could all get away. And as she put it, go get us a farm. And we're going to have our own farm. It was so poignant the way she talked about it in the records. But they told her father, who was a slave on, had been a slave on the plantation, the brother of her owner, that he had to claim that she was a loose woman and shouldn't be taking care of a child and couldn't, and that he wanted to take care of the child. He would be better. And so the plantation owners went to court to demand that he be given to his grandfather based on his mother being unfit. And the court gave him to his grandfather. And then his grandfather, who couldn't control what was happening, the white man who was the plantation owner, hired him out to some other planter, and he was gone. And he ran away. And he managed to work and stay out of the sight line of these people, and got himself, did a lot of, I traced his life all the way up to the late 20th century, his descendants. They all were, they worked as sharecroppers, as tenant farmers. He had a family life, and despite the fact what happened to him, a contrast with that is that another slave on the same plantation, whose name was George, was loved by the plantation owner, who was the brother of, it's just complicated, of Boss's owner. Anyway, this guy loved his biracial son, and he told him, if you stay with me, I'll make you rich after slavery is over. When it was over, don't go away, stay with me, and I'll make you rich by the time I die. Well, when the guy died, the plantation owner, in 1895, the slave George, was rich. What his father did, his white father did, which I couldn't find anybody else doing it, was he bought property, he put it in his name. When he couldn't put it in his name, well, he kept it, and then later on left it to him. And so by 1895, that former slave, George Rickford, was wealthy, owned this land. He had a family. I traced their lives too. And all of his children went to college. The grandchildren all went to college. Most of them went to Tuskegee and other places too. But in fact, they started a whole enterprise, that generation, the next generation, the next generation. The stories are wonderful, and I can't detail all of them here of what they did. But one thing they did finally is to set up something called Darden Industries, which is in existence right now in Alabama, and is the largest farm services, one of the large farm services operations. They also own farmland. They're wealthy people. And they have handed this down generation to generation. They were the only wealthy ones I found. And my message is, if all the white plantation owners had in fact given something to the children that their children, where they impregnated a slave woman, then we wouldn't be talking about reparations, would we?
That is that point, right? Because you are tracing them, and you're tracing what happened to them over time. When you said Darden, is that the same Darden that is the food service company that owns a series of restaurants?
It's
Is,
Darden Industries, yes. It's in
okay, like I
Alabama.
believe I don't want to say the names of the restaurants itself before looking at it, but they're very popular restaurants, and that's the same Darden Industries.
No, Darden Industries. I'm sorry. Darden Industries. I know what you're talking about, the food that they give to restaurants and they service them and so on. Darden Industries is in Alabama. People can look it up on the internet, and there are stories about them written in all the farm journals and magazines and stuff, and pictures. And I met a family member, and I've talked to them on the phone, and so they're wonderful people. They worked hard, they stayed out of jail, and they inherited something, and they made something out of it, and they are wealthy. But unfortunately, and it's called Darden Industries, so industries. And though that didn't happen to all of those children whose fathers didn't give them anything.
I like the way that you talk about reparations, and you were looking at what this history does and what intergenerational wealth does. Is this also the focus of the book, to also look at the ramifications of this slave system that happened after slavery?
Absolutely, absolutely. What I have in the book, I traced the families, their descendants, all the way up to the late 20th century. What I found is in the appendix, the actual data and the report. But what I suggest is that economists say that one of the reasons why the poverty rates among Black people, all of the problems that we have, and that the economic issues that we deal with, and health issues, and a number of other things, nutritional deficiencies during slavery, transmitted, all of that, that is a factor in why Black people have not been able to all of us move ahead in a way that some people say, well, why don't you just pick yourself up by your bootstraps and go on? And it is that legacy of slavery. These families, I found, intergenerationally, most of them worked in low-wage jobs all the time, as we would expect. I even looked to see what happened when they got sick. They had hardly no medical care, but when they died, I looked at the death certificates, and they died of the diseases that I call Black folks diseases. So heart trouble, diabetes, all the things that we're still dying from, high blood pressure. And they stayed out of jail. Matter of fact, the one that went to jail and served more time was part of the extended family that I was talking about that managed to accumulate some wealth. In any case, and then there's a wonderful family out in Illinois, descendants all the way back a trace, where she is operating a upward bound program and talent search, all those programs that we had at the Department of Education, which is about to be closed, I guess, in Washington. And she is a descendant of that family into this generation. So, but that's unusual. Most of the people are working class. They're like the people in my family, the Southalls down in Tennessee, where there's a big resort called Southall in Tennessee that's on the land where my relatives were slaves. My ancestors were slaves. And I went down there and asked them, why don't you put up a marker about the slave? They said, there weren't any slaves here. I said, yes, right over there. This is where we were. And they ran me off. They got some security guy to come and tell me that I wasn't supposed to be there. It's a resort for wealthy people.
And
Anyway,
they were like, there's no slavery. No slavery ever happened here. Wow.
and so I'm thinking of going back down there. I'll take my nephew with me. Maybe he can help. Anyway, so that this is a story of working class Black people. Now, let me also point out that economists who have done studies on why Black people didn't move up the ladder as quickly as we would have thought say that one of the things is that immigrants, for example, who have come to this country, if they're not Black, have most often fared better. And they've compared, there's a study where they've done a whole comparison of when an immigrant comes, what happened with them. And while many of them are not doing well, especially if they're Black or brown, that they, in fact, intergenerationally have done much better than Black people did, because we started off, one economist said, after slavery, even the ones who got away, in fact, with no education, with discrimination, and all of those things that have haunted us and continue today, whereas some of the rest of them didn't have to deal with that. So I think that,
does that mean like, would that mean that there are people who, if you were immigrants and you were coming over, you weren't already labeled as someone who should be a slave? You wouldn't be targeted in the same way as people who many in the South believed got away. It's almost like if you're Black, they feel that we have to own part of you. Is that part of the analysis that you're talking about?
Yes, that is it. It's not anti-immigrant. I'm not. I do everything I can for poor immigrants who come here seeking refuge and are abused. But what they're saying is that if you Black people, I have a sentence in the book somewhere where I say that seeing a Black person as somebody who was to labor and to labor for free or for little or nothing, even today, for many Southerners, white Southerners, was like humidity in the South in the summertime, something you just expect. See? And you wouldn't expect anything else, you see. And so you have that disadvantage starting out when you show your face. It's like when you give a name that we know is a Black name, we know. Somebody on the phone figures out who you are, or you fill out an application and you inadvertently say something that identifies you as a Black person. So they didn't have to be identified in any way except to look at them and say that this is a person who belongs in this category, and that's where they should stay.
Wow. When you are even talking about it, it just seems chilling, because there really is it seems a direct connection between what happened then and now. When you're talking about the apprenticeships on Black families from emancipation to present, when you say to present, are you saying, is there some implication that like there are some levels of there's levels of slavery or its effects that are going on now, like from these apprenticeships, or at least the very effects of these apprenticeships that are going now in present day?
Well, it is. There are some things that do happen in terms of the kind of labor that people have to do. But what I was trying to point out there was that the repercussions of what has happened to everybody all these years are still with us. And people think, well, we're so far removed from anything that ever happened. Intergenerationally, these deficits and these problems and issues, and also being identified as Black. I was teasing one of my cousins the other day and said, I'm going to start, my little cousin, I said, I'm going to start saying I'm not Black. How does that sound? And he just died laughing because he says he's a little kid. He said, well, everybody will know. I said, well, if I say I'm not, then, I'm not. But we can't do that, right? So
like it didn't work for OJ.
So what I'm saying about today, let's go to today. We suffer all those deficiencies, and we work to overcome them, and many families have. And we always have to say we've come a long way. We always have to say that. It's true. But in point of fact, what we must learn from what happened. First, we must learn that there were some people, despite the oppression, who fought hard to keep their children, who did everything they could, and in some cases got a child back, even if they didn't get all of them. There were people who didn't give up, no matter what. They would go away and come back. This woman walking down the road with her kid that she stole off when nobody was looking on the plantation. They were all out, and the plantation owner saw them down the road and came down and beat her almost to death and took the child away from her. And do you think that she just said, well, let it go? No, she came running after him, trying to get her child. So that we are a people who have overcome lots of things. And the way we did it was by persistence. And in our own time, what we have to do is learn from the history of what we do. For example, I remember talking to Coretta King. She and I were friends in the last years before she got sick. I did not know Martin, but I knew her very well. We used to talk about how after we got the right to vote, Martin, she said, she always called him Martin, so I'm saying Martin, I'm not being disrespectful, that Martin said, now that we got the vote, then all we got to do is these people will be persuaded to listen to us. And if all of us go out and vote and show that we can, then we can get something done. She said he quickly decided that that wasn't true because I said, well, I'm glad he did, because I was about to tell you that I didn't want to say anything negative about him, but that was kind of dumb. I said, what did he do then? She said he wrote a book called, it was his last book that he wrote, Where Do We Go From Here? And in the book, he talks about the need for not only voting, but nonviolent civil disobedience. And that's because she and I used to talk about it all the time. That's because they learned, people in Nashville, where I'm from, with the Nashville movement, we learned that voting is fine, but it doesn't get you where you want to go unless you do something else. And in fact, we didn't get the vote until we did engage in nonviolent civil disobedience. Boycotts in Nashville are really the most effective thing. But in any case, what we have to do now, people are always saying, whenever I ask them what we should be doing about what's going on, remember our history, that's the first thing, and that we are a strong people and we can stand up and we're not going to bend. And the second thing is the boycott idea is a great idea. The idea, because it did work, we've tried it before, any nonviolent civil disobedience in the cause, as well as voting. And politicians want two things. They want you to vote for them, and then they want you to vote for them again so they can get reelected over and over. But you have to persuade them. You cannot think that we should have learned this by now. Why do we still think that if you just vote for somebody, they're going to do the right thing? I don't know any other group of people who believe that.
That there has to be an actual organized political arm that demands what you want.
Yes. And we have organizations but many of them, the people who are involved, are not willing to do what Jimmy Baldwin used to say to us when we were at Howard, and he'd come and talk to us at Howard University. Um, that somebody's got to go through the fire, and also that each generation has to make its own dent in the wall of injustice. And you make that dent however it needs to be made. But the leaders of most organizations, as well as politicians, are too comfortable being in whatever role they're in. And they will discourage people from engaging in civil disobedience. And of course, they encourage them to vote. I mean, they'll come out all the time and say, "Get out the vote, get out the vote, get out the vote." But I say, you have to resist. I wrote a book called "History Teaches Us to Resist" too. And in that book, I talk about all the movements I was involved in where I went out and protested: anti-apartheid movement, the any movement that came anti-Vietnam War movement. When I saw what happened to black kids who were in that war, so I think that people need to be willing to go out and put themselves on the line. I don't mean be a fool, but I mean strategize. When we did the Free South Africa movement to end apartheid, we met every day for a year at my house in Washington, D.C. Randall Robinson, dead now. Bill Lucy, the great labor leader, passed away this year. The men in the movement, Roger Wilkins, the great journalist, passed away. But we would sit there every day and plot and plan who was going to get arrested, where people were going, what they were going to do, and coordinate with the people in Congress. And we got sanctions passed. And after a year and a half, and over Reagan's veto, we were able to contribute to the movement. That's a year and a half of staying up half the night, working during the day, organizing people, teaching them civil disobedience, having them get arrested, getting arrested yourself, getting talked about bad, and everything else. But in the end, we prevailed. We got the sanctions bill. South Africa has problems, but at least they don't have legal apartheid.
You have the current administration who would say that they oppress white people there, and he's giving them preferred status as refugees in the United States. When you look at what's going on now and the struggles that you've seen, the struggles that you've been through, there are many people who are like, we've seen this before, we've been through this before. Why do we keep going through it? I believe my mother, who is 89 years old, said a few years ago that we have been fighting these same battles her entire life. There are many people who are discouraged, who are like, these things will never go away. You got rid of slavery, you replaced it with other things. You replaced it with the prison industrial complex. You have the wealth gap between is higher now, as high now as it's been. We have one of our listeners, Ryan Haygood, writes about the wealth gap, the black wealth gap in New Jersey, and how great that is in his own push for reparations. Why are we? Derek Bell talked about how racism is permanent. Is what we're doing permanent? Are we destined to just always have this fight?
Well, it is a struggle. Derek Bell, who was a dear friend of mine, was correct. He tried all kinds of things, working as a litigator, being a professor, encouraging other students to do things that needed to be done in the struggle. A wonderful person. And I miss him very much. But in any case, I think that we are a people who have to struggle. And we have to struggle because we are in a situation where we are a tenth of the population. My brother always tells me, he's a preacher. Always tells me that, well, if you're only 10% of the population, why are you saying that you expected this, that, and the other to happen? He says that to people. Because if you don't struggle, it's not going to happen. Our history, if you look at it, is since so-called emancipation and then abolition and then the stuff that happened, is a series of up and downs, if you drew some kind of graph. And we always celebrate when some landmark legislation or something other happens. And it's difficult for us to see what we have to do to reinforce whatever that is. Let me give you an example. Juneteenth. The Biden administration people and the Democrats were all upset because because Black folks and well-meaning white folks, liberals, wanted the George Floyd bill and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and all those things passed in Congress. And people wanted some controls over police and all the rest of that. And that movement is part of our history. Well, in fact, they were not going to do what they said they would do and enact this legislation. So he gave us Juneteenth instead. I know because I was talking to some of the people who were involved, that a holiday was given to us, okay? Juneteenth. And we go out and celebrate on Juneteenth. And people should celebrate. People got to be happy, sometimes. But they don't know, and I talk about it in my book, that when Juneteenth actually happened in Texas and Black folks were supposed to be freed, some people didn't know it. But when they found out, they tried to leave the plantation. And a general of the Union Army who came in that area of Texas down by the border after that had happened said that the Sabine River between Louisiana and Texas ran red with the blood of slaves that their masters had killed them, that they stood on the banks. And when they tried to leave the plantations, because they heard that they were free, they would just stand there like they were doing target practice and shoot them and kill them. And they'd fall in the river. And he said he was so shocked because the river was red with their blood. So when I think of Juneteenth, I don't think of parties or, anything like that. I know that they duped us by doing that instead of passing the George Floyd bill and all the rest of the John Lewis bill and so on. But I see the river running with blood, the Sabine River, every time when I look at that. Now, what we should have done, in my opinion, is taken the Juneteenth holiday, although with a clear understanding of what it all meant and commemorating and celebrating. But we should have said, that's not enough. You're not going to give us that and then not pass these bills and then say, you gave us Juneteenth.
Right.
That's not going to be enough. But nobody said that at the time. And we do that every time. They set up a commission or they give us, something. And Coretta, although she worked diligently to get the Martin Luther King holiday, she would ponder sometimes whether if we just get the holiday, will people say, well, everything's all right now. Now we have holiday. And so she had some ambivalent feelings about it, wanting to honor Martin and wanting to make people do it, but at the same time, hoping that people would do service or do something, which some people do on the day. So I don't know. The image of that. Can you imagine that general standing there with his troops and saying, look at that, the river is red.
Right.
And it was the blood of the slaughtered.
Right. And that even now, we don't even recognize that happened when we have Juneteenth celebrations that aren't actual commemorations of like the violence and the brutality that has just been inflicted on us.
Yeah.
When you're looking at right now, and the attacks on the Smithsonian, right? Like you talked about the plantation that your family history is in, and when you went to that plantation, they were like, no, it didn't happen. Slavery didn't happen. And you see what's going on with the Smithsonian, with the attacks on Black history in general, right? Like the use of the word diversity, equity, and inclusion just to mean not talking about anything Black that makes white people feel uncomfortable. How do you look at this moment right now? Is this moment right now, how does it compare to other moments within our history?
When I look at this moment, is to look at things that I was a part of getting done, being destroyed. When you look around and you've been here a while, and you look what you did. I was one of the people who created the Department of Education. They're getting ready to destroy it. Okay. I was one of the people who, in fact, along with Lonnie Bunch, who is now the head of this whole Smithsonian, the first Black head of it, and some other people who have passed away, we were in the group that demanded an African American museum on the mall for years and years and years. And I was on the advisory board of the Smithsonian for about 3 or 4 years when I was still on the Civil Rights Commission. And I used to plead and beg for a museum on the mall for us. And I would get told off in the public meetings by people who would say, on the board, who would say, Americans don't want to come to Washington to see something about, you're always talking about Blacks. And I said there should be an Indigenous Peoples Museum too, and one for women. And nobody wants to come here seeing those Indians, or nobody wants to come here. They don't come here to see anything about slavery and Black people and all of that. And they would tell me that in the public meeting. And one time we all went out and walked the grounds on the mall and took notes, our little group, and identified places where there could be a museum, because they would also tell me there's no room on the mall for another museum. Why don't you be quiet? There's no room. And so we went out and we found Bernice Reagan, who was in Sweet Honey of the Rock. She's passed away too. We showed them where you could build all the different places. Well, they built the Holocaust Museum, which is nice. They now have Indigenous people, and they're trying to close it. And now they're trying to close the African American Museum. Had the nerve to say, the woman that Mr. Trump appointed to go in and do the job of cleaning it up, he says, something like that we don't want anything that makes our country look bad. See? So we should forget slavery, forget Jim Crow, forget our conditions now with all those people. The other thing is federal jobs have been a big factor in Blacks moving to the middle class, federal employment. And now a lot of that is being laid waste too. It's just some of the roadkill along the way that nobody talks about, but it's real.
When you were when you helped create the very first Department of Education, what was it supposed to do? And in any type of rebuilding, what do we need to demand that it do?
Well, when I came to Washington, it was a Carter administration, Jimmy Carter, and I ran education for him, and it was in the Department of Health and Human Services. With that department now, it was called HEW then, Health, Education, and Welfare. And I was the E in HEW, everybody said. I ran education. And it was clear to me that Jimmy Carter was right to have promised to create a department, because education got squeezed between all the health enterprises and all of the Social Security and all the other big, they all had much larger budgets and more prominence and more time spent by the leadership and so on. And it was hard to get any attention paid to some of the stuff that needed to be done in education. So I concluded he was right. And so I was pleased to help him get the votes, to get the Congress to pass it. And I'll tell you, Shirley Chisholm story about it. She won't mind because she's not here with us anymore. Miss C was a member of Congress from New York. I wanted her to vote, and then I was going around collecting, trying to get votes for the department. And she said, Mary, I can't vote for it because of my district has union teachers, and these union teachers, the leadership don't want it. And I said, okay, well, what can you do for me then? I don't want you to vote for it. She said, I tell you what I'll do. I'll take a walk. And I didn't know what that expression meant at the time, but what it meant was she wouldn't show up. So therefore, she wouldn't be voting against it because she knew, like I did, that we needed it. Now, the whole purpose was to make sure that we had just started having funding for disability education for kids. Um, and we've some of the other all stuff for disabled people had just come into fruition. We also had problems with getting enough money for poor children in districts where large numbers of blacks and poor whites and were, and Title I, which was a very important program and still is for those. And we needed more money, and we needed more attention from the leadership and all the rest of it. And so we got the Department of Education, and the disability rights, the student loan programs, and all the rest of them were cleaned up, and Title I was expanded. There are problems with every kind of entity that anybody has. I'm sure that they've got some bureaucratic problems, but it seems to me ironic that having taken education out of health, education, and welfare, you would put it back in HHS, which is the successor of HEW, which means it would be squeezed again between health and Social Security, and all the other big programs that are there, although they're trying to cut a lot of them. So it doesn't make any sense to put something back in something that didn't work and to move it over unless you're trying to make sure that the people who are the beneficiaries do not get what they need.
Do you see them and this as in a way, a deliberate, people have used the term resegregation. Do you think that this is a concerted effort by the children and the same people who were around during the 60s and 70s to just go for resegregation, to try to, like, in a very deliberate way, say that these gains from civil rights, we don't want them? Do you think that it is linked to the same white supremacy that you fought?
Well, it cannot, you cannot say that it isn't. If you look at the Justice Department, where the Civil Rights Division was established in order to protect and investigate and bring cases involving discrimination against African Americans, Black people, okay? The Negro, as they said in those days. And that was its whole purpose. That's why it was there, okay? And now you have people saying that the Civil Rights Division should protect the people who are discriminating against Black people in the name of we're getting rid of DEI, you know. So anybody who does anything that they think they shouldn't be doing, like the humidity on a hot southern day, as a southerner says about Blacks who should be in the field, is a DEI. Or that we don't need to learn our history. We'd be better off if we thought about something else and forgot about it. I said that once to Al Shanker, who was a labor leader, AFT, and was testifying before the Civil Rights Commission when I was at the time. And he said that, why do you people always have to talk about slavery? You have to go back to slavery. I said, well, and you maybe should stop talking about that and think about today. I said, well, maybe you should stop thinking about the oppression that the Jewish people experienced and talk about something else. And he said, well, that was different. That was more, it was
Wow.
terrible and it lasted a long time and whatever. And so we have, we have to talk. But if you just didn't talk about that and you followed the example of other groups and just moved on up and forgot about what happened to you. So, when people say things like that to you over the years, I've thought that if I weren't 5'2" and slim and skinny and don't have much weight, I would jump up on them and I don't know what I'd do to them. But in fact, people have said things like that all to my face forever. So, and to all of us, a lot of us, it happens. So that here we are. And all we can do is each make our own contributions.
Miss Berry, before we run out of time, I wanted to ask you a question to try to get your opinion, if I could, uh, in regards to the election between uh, Miss Harris and, of course, Donald Trump. Uh, can I get your view on that as it relates to, because a lot of Black women, as you know, who primarily organized not only themselves but organized the brothers as well to come out and vote. However, there were a number of other groups, as you know, who said that they were going to vote along with particularly Black women, but when they went to the voting booth, did not do that. And of course, now some of those groups are calling for Black women to unite with them to begin to protest Donald Trump. What is your view on what happened in that in that election?
Well, there's a lot of things happened that shouldn't have happened, but I always say beware of allyship. In the civil rights movement in the after Martin was assassinated and after all the changes that took place, one of the big things that the organizations and folks we relied on was we have allies because, they came and helped us in the civil rights movement. All the other organizations for all the other groups are our allies. The Asian American groups are our allies. Latino groups are our allies. So we work together in the women's groups and we all, join together and we have to stick together. We shouldn't do anything that in fact will harm the interests of one of our allies. And I always thought that there was something out of whack with that because I said to myself, I wonder if some of these allies are going to stay the course. And then when the Asian American group sued Harvard and UNC and got that case decided, and they were supposed to be the Asian groups, we have some, they're our allies. And people were walking around saying, how could our allies be doing this? We're all supposed to be. And I knew that all my years doing civil rights work, whenever any of our allies had a problem, whether it was Asians, women's groups, or whatever, I would immediately attend to it, see what I could do about the problem. And all of us would join together. I would never have thought of going and suing them or doing something. So I said to one of my good friends who runs a civil rights organization, maybe you ought to rethink the ally question because allies do not try to keep you from making progress while you're trying to help them make progress. There seems to be sort of a bad bargain somewhere. And so maybe it's just particular pieces of the group. But we know that this happened because we know that the cases happened. I didn't make it up. Okay. Now, what I think about the election is, first of all, um, a good friend of mine who is a pastor, Amos Brown, great civil rights leader, Campbell's pastor, and I have talked long time about this while it was going on. I didn't expect her to win. And I did not expect her to win because the people who organized her entry into the race made a mess of it. You don't start out with talking about how democracy is being stolen and Trump is he's a fascist, and you want to play by the rules. And then you put some guy who you knew you should have put out before, but you wait till right before the election, then you put him out. And then you don't have any opportunity for your candidate to argue with or debate other people who might be interested and have some points to make, so she could slaughter them. I like that word today. But you set it up. So it was jerry rigged and it was a mess, in my opinion. It gave credence to the claim that the Democrats were being anti-democratic because they didn't have any kind of primary, or they didn't, all that stuff. But the main reason why I didn't think she was going to be elected is because that part of the country is not ready for a black person, a black woman, to be president of the United States. Their view of women, as you can see from all the stuff that's been happening, is one that is a throwback to an earlier generation. Moms in the kitchen, baking pies, whatever, and not making decisions. They even closed down the whole emphasis on women getting involved in national security policy and so many things. But I didn't expect her to win. And therefore, I was sorry to see her leave the Senate because I wanted her to keep her seat and hope that and then when she got to be vice president, there were people saying, well, she didn't even run against anybody to be vice president, all that stuff. But I hope that as vice president, if she stayed there and if he had stayed there, she would have another period. And maybe they could have won. I don't know. But I just didn't, the way they handled they made it messy for her. I also think that all the black people supporting her made coming out, all the sororities, all of us, everybody support everybody with joy and happiness and supporting her made some of the conservatives, right wingers, on the white side, even more adamant that strategies had to be developed to try to keep her from getting in because she was too woke. I guess that's the expression they use. So I didn't expect her to win in the first place, although I hoped that she would.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been just an honor, right, to have you here. We always ask all of our guests one question, and it's a hip hop show, so we always ask our guests, who is your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group? If you don't have a favorite hip hop artist, give us the music that inspired you, or that may continue to inspire you, or that you think should inspire us in these times.
Well, I'm a jazz aficionado, old school. So I still listen to the old school stuff, which nobody's going to listen to, so I won't tell you, but names, Clifford Brown.
Clifford Brown was one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah, long time ago. But that's what I like and what inspires me.
Well, thank you so much for being on. We very much appreciate you being on. We would love to have you on again. We want to respect your time, and we know we have already had you on over an hour. But we definitely want to have you back again. If you will have us, we will be honored to have you back as well. I'm glad that you have written this book that is timely and always relevant when people are talking about reparations debates, when they're talking about just our history and the things that are being that people want to make disappear. So thank you.
Her book on Callie House, don't forget that one.
And thank you for all the things that, like when you're talking about starting the Department of Education the thing, like all of the different things that you have done to help all people and Black people, right? Like, yeah, it's just an honor to be in your presence. So,
and you know, John, she wrote a book called $5 and a Pork Chop Sandwich. You know.
okay. Oh,
Can't hear you.
oh, yes.
My face is black as true. That's about Callie House. Somebody mentioned that. Yes. A lot of books. I've written 13 books. Well, thank you for having me. And next time, I hope that the sound and whatever it is works better. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You know, that wasn't her first time being on, John. She'd been on before.
Oh, she was on here before?
She came on and she came on when she wrote that book, you know, about, you know, $5 and a pork chop sandwich. She was talking about, you know, you know, how, you know, you could pay Black folks to go vote. All you gotta do is give them $5 or a pork chop sandwich. You know?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Which was that when we were in the studio or when we were?
Yes. Yeah.
It's back when we were in the studio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, excellent. Excellent, man. That's great. No, it's always great to have her on, man. Like, because she has just done so much, and just you know, you are literally talking to someone who has been there, done that, and has fought those battles, and can teach us for. She could teach us for now and forever, right? Like,
and they would literally, you talk about getting rid of books, they would literally like to ban her,
right?
You know, because she's a. I mean, when she talks about, you know, having actually talked to Dr. King and influenced him, you know, I mean, so you could imagine the you know, Coretta Scott King.
Or talking to Coretta, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, so could you imagine her lecturing not only on a college campus, but could you imagine her talking to, you know, high school kids?
Well,
right?
the people at the University of Pennsylvania have a treasure, right? Because she's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and they have a treasure there. We have Rufus Burnett. Rufus, are you there?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
Hey, man. Well, first, thank you for coming on. We are honored to have you here. You have. Oh wait, hold on. Let me just get this right in terms of your introduction. We are honored to have you on. We are looking at. Forgive me, because I'm doing these three things at one time, and I just want to get one of the things that I'm about to say correct. And it is so. You wrote a book called Decolonizing Revelation, a spatial reading of the blues, right? And our conversation today, and we're going to have some spoilers, right? So, Ed, I know you haven't seen the movie. Cover your ears, because we're going to be talking about it. Zaid, have you seen Sinners? All right, well, cover your ears. If you don't like spoilers, cover your ears up, because we're going to be talking.
I ain't like you normal people. I ain't got time to go see movies.
Oh, you should make time for this one. You should make time for this one. There's some movies that come out, right? And when they come out, that they become cultural events because of time and place. And it's like, ooh, okay, all right, right? Like think of it as like the Kendrick Lamar halftime show, but like a movie that's just a work of art that's also fun, but that also keeps hitting you on all manner of level of things, right? Like, and again, we're going to be spoiling this movie. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta not know what happened. Like, Ed, if you don't want to know what happened, then, you know, just cover your ears or something, because we're going to be talking and breaking it down. Now, you have, I met you through Chris Randall, and Chris Randall read a passage where you were talking about the Black church, but you were also talking about secular music and the divinity in secular music, how secular, like Aretha Franklin is like going to church, and that there's a spirituality that is embedded in the music, in Black music, right? When I saw this movie, I thought of that conversation. It was like, I got to get him to talk about this movie. Got to get him to talk about this movie.
No, I appreciate that. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So like, I've been getting a lot of comments from folks that know I dig on the blues. But first off, I should say that I am from Mississippi. I was born in one of what is arguably probably the birthplace of the blues. There's some historians that are, try to attribute it to New Orleans, but of course, that would be foreclosing the transatlantic reality, of course, right? So we know that all the influences on the blues from Islam to Yoruba to the work songs and the field songs from plantation enslavement of black bodies that made the Middle Passage across the Atlantic. It's not necessarily a melting pot, but there are multiple influences there. And so, it was a part of the ether of being in Mississippi, even in the late 90s, when I was coming into maturation in Gulfport, Mississippi. It wasn't a day of the week on many other major radio stations that there wasn't a blues set on the Black radio stations, especially on the weekends. And so I would leave church oftentimes waiting for the gospel hours to go off and the blues hours to start. And so, that nexus is there. And so one thing I think is important to clear up, I don't see or understand a concept called Black secular music. Secularism to me is a colonialist, Eurocentric fabrication of trying to transcend an intellectual tradition that comes out of, particularly to me, while some scholars might disagree with me, a kind of retrofitting of the diversity of Christianity, which is a 2,000-year-old history, to kind of fit Christianity being in Europe, to kind of fit Europeans and Spanish engagement with Muslims and Jews, Spanish Christian engagements. We think about the Inquisition and the reconquest of Spain, that Christianity dealing with those types of dynamics, right? And then also dealing with, in Europe, the Protestant Reformation and these kinds of dynamics. Secularism kind of develops as a kind of critique of the intellectual authority of the church. And so I don't think that secularism is a term that we can use to describe anything Black and sonic.
Because it's Black and sonic, it's spiritual, it's soulful. That's why we call it soul music.
Right.
And that's part of what your academic work focuses on.
Well, I mean, you could say it's academic, but the players and the livers of this music, the producers of this music, have made that point. They don't need academics to tell them that.
Right.
Because the musicians will leave the church, go to the juke and back and forth. Mm-hmm. Right. they don't see any difference between what's going on sonically or spiritually.
You're partying on Saturday night, you're going to the church on Sunday morning.
Right. And you can see that as continuity. Even some blues songs talk about that. Right.
Stormy Monday Blues.
Yeah, Stormy Monday. Right. Yeah. So Stormy Monday goes through the work week, and it mentions all these things. They call it Stormy Monday. Tuesday just the same. Wednesday just as worse, and Thursday oh so bad. The eagle flies on Friday, and Saturday go out to play. Sunday I go to church to kneel down to pray.
That's right.
Yes, right. So when a blues singer is singing this, there's no condemnation about Saturday night.
Right.
Right. And so Albert Murray is the thinker that's on my mind when I think about sinners. Let me get to the film now. the biggest thematic in the film to me, right? Of course, you got the big time-space continuum break when
and this is the coolest part of the whole film, right? Like this is a spoiler alert for everybody. You don't want to hear this part if you haven't seen it, right? If you have not seen the movie, you don't want this part. But if you haven't seen the movie, well, you probably should have already seen it. So
yeah. Well, I would say that any person who has an authentic relationship to the blues has experienced this movie already within the understanding of time space that Coogler actually puts on the screen.
Yes.
Right. So in that scene, Coogler has one of the associate characters, I think it's Sammy is his name.
Yes.
Right. And he's the father of a preacher, and Sammy's character, son of a preacher. Sorry, excuse me. He's a son of a preacher man, as the song goes, right? And he's going and playing the blues on his free time, but he works on a plantation, right? Very common thing. So this is like workers' music. Like you can see the same thing in the Caribbean, you can see the same thing in Latin America. You see the same thing. This is worker culture, right? And so of course, you know, as he's moving through to play this song at the club with his cousins, Smoke and Stack, right? Stack hears him in the car singing, and he almost stops the car. They're driving to go to this juke joint that they just built. He stops in his tracks because Sammy hits this note, and Stack immediately realizes, oh, we're gonna make some money tonight, because he's gonna be on stage, right? But when he breaks open this kind of sonic reality, and this is something that we all have experienced, but we just don't necessarily associate it with the spirituality of ancestral time. That concept actually comes from one of the consultants of the film, or the reproduction of that concept through scholarship vis-a-vis Yvonne Sherrotte, right? Yvonne Sherrotte wrote the book called Black Magic. She's a professor at, I believe, Swarthmore College Emeritus. And all of her work is associated with hoodoo and voodoo and all of these regenerations of West African traditional forms. But anyways, what she basically says, ancestral time, it basically works like this. I'll say it simply. If ancestors are eternal, right, then they have no respect for past and present or future. They can enter they can enter from past, present, like their time is just abiding, right? It's not temporal. There's no, it's just is, right? So it's not moving in a linear fashion in the way that we understand time. So at any given time, the ancestral moment can break in. In Christianity, they will call that Kairos, right? The Kairos time. I'm a theologian by training, right? So it's Kairos time. That's when God's time breaks into the human condition, and the divinity shows up and makes themselves known. You dig? So what happens in the film? He plays this note, he's singing this note, and all of a sudden hip hop is present. All of a sudden African traditional religions are present. All of a sudden R&B is present. Electric blues is present. Right, all of the future orientations and the past orientations enter into that scene where Sammy is playing that music. So my point is this: if you haven't seen this film and you know Black culture, right, that scene and its understanding of time makes me want to say, you know, this movie even if you haven't seen it.
Right. And it made me go, this director, this brother did something, something nice. Like this brother made this movie for me and us. This was a movie that he knew we would get it, we would understand it. And it's yes, is it a vampire movie? Kind of, right? There are vampires in the movie. Yes, that's an important plot point. Absolutely. But it seems like it's about the blues. And it's about that journey as well, right? It's about the journey of our music. And it starts to be like, well, in our music and in our culture, we often have to face vampires.
Oh yeah, but see, see my take on this. I don't know how different it might be from yours. I'm not going to make an assumption.
Okay.
Right. But the title of the film is called Sinners, right? Right. And so one of the things I feel like the title of the film is begging us to question is who are the sinners in the film.
Right. That's
right. And the only sinners in the film to me are the white supremacists that trick, stack, and smoke into buying the lumber house, right? So that they could kill them and lynch them in the end. Right. So everybody else survives either through the spiritual realm, right? When smoke goes, right, to be with his wife who gets killed. Then you got vampires living on, right? And they were trying to escape supremacy, right, of multiple forms, right, as vampires, right? So the vampires ain't the monsters in this film to me.
Okay, so my take on it is, now I got that and I respect that, right? And I respect that and I love how like Black horror actually always has to deal with white supremacy and the monster and evil that is white supremacy, right? Because white supremacy is a monster and an evil all on its own. Like someone brought up a point earlier that the white lead vampire was like, no, I am not the Klan, right?
He's Irish.
Like I'm not dumb. No, don't. Those MFs are evil. I'm trying to bring everyone together, right?
He's Irish.
I'm trying to, right. So, but part of me, I appreciated that, right? I appreciated it a lot. Part of me, and part of the reason why I love this movie is because it does lead to a layering. We can have these conversations, right? It's a wonderful movie for us to have community conversations about what it means, right? Because it is that rich, right? When he did that scene where time just opens up, that just changed everything for me, right? But for me, right, the vampire represents the white liberal because he's pushing, hey man, I'm not dumb. I want equality. But he also demands control.
That's true.
And he also takes away choice, right? Like he was chomping on people without asking them first. He was only asking because he had to, because he can't come in without it. So he used that, he's still doing that like white supremacy, but it's that liberal white supremacy, right? Like it's like, hey, man. And he's like somebody who would own a record company because he's like, hey, man, I was just attracted to your music. It drew me over. And so, oh man, I loved it because it was like all that level of I want to consume you, right? I want to consume your music. I want to consume the talent and the feeling that you get. I want to have a conversation with my ancestors too, because what you have is so beautiful that in this Black culture, what you have is there, and we could all be equal, but I'm gonna be in charge. And there are a bunch of people who, because I mean, some parts of it seem like a musical, right? Because when they're dancing in there, and it's just beautiful film, beautifully filmed, right? Beautifully filmed musical scenes. Absolutely. But the wildest scene to me was the scene where they're doing this. They put soul into the Irish stuff, right? Because the Irish song had no soul until he started getting more and more people out there. He started biting more Black people. The song got more soul. Until the point where the song gets downright funky, right? That song gets downright funky, and you get all these Black people dancing to this Irish song, and this Irish song is starting to have some beats to it, right? Like country music, right? Like as in it being like starting off maybe part of it being Irish folk, but then a whole lot of African comes in, right? A whole lot of, and then it really gets funky at the end, and it's a chilling point in the movie. It's like, and I love that he did a song, right, that was about consumption, appropriation, where there's white leadership in the guise of benevolence.
Alvin, did you freeze?
You said what?
I think you froze.
Oh, I froze, or?
Yeah,
I still see him good. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I think I'm still here.
Yeah, I think you're still there. On my end.
All right.
But
So,
yeah.
but yeah, like that whole record company thing was like, yo, like I just want your music. I just want to consume it and control it, and and I'm gonna make you think that you got something when you didn't, right? So that musical part about who controls the music, right? How and what does it mean? Because the whole thing about the vampire was just like vampires consume blood. What is blood? Life. And and that scene that we loved, that time where time just stopped or just collapsed and imploded. They're like, that's what attracted us to it, right? That's why they came over, right? That's why and so that power of like needing to commodify, control. Like I saw they weren't the Klan, right?
No, they weren't the Klan.
It was not the Klan, but he still needed to get killed with an axe.
Yeah, I mean, I also wonder like the degree to which like Stack's survival as a vampire is more ambiguous than maybe we wanted to, because it's like on one hand you could say he was too scared to die, and I think one of the viewers said something to this effect just a second ago. It popped up.
Okay.
Yeah, like there's an old gospel song that says high is high, low is low. Everybody going to go to heaven, but nobody want to die. Right.
Okay.
So I think one of the most poignant capacities of the blues is to face, engage, and live with ambiguity. That the blues is not a clear, it never offers a clear resolution, right? In that sense, it kind of offers a kind of complementarity to like straight up political action or straight up moral or ethical action. So neither moral or ethics or politics, and the kind of decision making that you have to make in those kinds of processes always work out.
And I think that that's part of the whole thing, right? Because they had done the fighting in the war thing. They had done the try to use criminal, like would be considered crime or underground world in terms of that. And they're like, that didn't work. So then they're like, let's try some black capitalism, right? Let's see if we can do that, right? And we knew the results of that was going to be like, no, the white people are just going to kill you and take your money. Right? Like they're just going to steal your money again and try to kill you, right? So what are the ways out? And it seems like both Smoke and Stack develop ways out. One, in terms of some level of assimilation. He assimilated with the white liberal, right? Like he became a vampire too. And with his, ambiguous black woman on his side, right? Like, and that she, and she actually may be in control because she's the one who turned him. So we like all that stuff is rich and there too, right? He ends up the post-credit scenes, which you got to see, where he ends up in the 90s, where it's like level of definite hip hop, and you're like, is he like a Russell Simmons? Is he like someone who is
with the Coochie sweater?
Right. Is he someone who is controlling the music in a way that is different, that speaks different in this time temporality kind of thing? Is he someone who is trying to make a way in that. And I like what you said in terms of like there's no judgment on it, right? Like there's not a good or bad. It's just how do you exist in a world that tries to kill you all the time? Like you try black capitalism and they were going to try to kill them, right? Like they were just going to kill you the next day, right? Like it's like, hey, that's cold, right? So all of that, right? And then you have like, like it's got to be the warrior, right? That's got to be the person. So there were different avenues that are explored in the film as well, and I appreciate it. This is a film that you really have to see again, and you can see it too. I know people who've seen this film like 5 times, and are just tired of it because it's rich in that way when you layer the music and their thoughtfulness about Blackness and this country, right? It's a beautiful and it's beautifully filmed. And
it definitely is. I definitely think it is. I mean, it definitely owes a lot to August Wilson. It definitely owes a lot to Octavia Butler. It definitely owes a lot, to man. There's so many people he's indebted to in the way that he puts this together, and he knows it. And it, as I think about like that last scene with Smoke, there's a memory that Levy's character has in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Oh, hey, okay.
Right now, Levy's dad is trying to avenge his wife, who has been violently and sexually abused by white supremacist men that just walked up in the house while he was gone, right? And Levy is recalling this moment, and his father leaves the house to go exact revenge on these whites because he know who they are, right? And when he walks up on them, like the way Levy talks about it, he's like, he got 3, it was 5 of them, he got 3 of them before the other 2 took him out, right? And then they get him, right, in the end. And I felt like that scene is what is troubling Levy his whole life, right? And I feel like, I don't know if it was intentional, but that scene felt a lot like the way Levy's character described his father's death.
Right. And I think that the only level of it was it's a film that even with that scene, it's directed so that you feel good. Right? It's as violent and as terrible as that scene is, right? It is directed in a way to lift your spirits.
It's I don't know if August didn't want to do that. Now August wanted to leave you in the funk, He wanted to leave you, facing the death, straight on. But
he was an intentional blues man of that order. That's right.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like Wilson, that's to me. It's like if you are that's what I was saying before. If you are a lover of that genre, of that spirituality, of what I call it in my own work, a cosmology, it's a different way of actually seeing the material reality. Blues is a different way of understanding the materiality, right? It's not the only place we could go for that, but it does carry that legacy in it, right? Just like what you did when you described the film, to me, that's a blues way of explanation. I mean, the blues don't cover everything. It's not a panacea, right? But it's able to engage with ambiguity, with resolve, with style, right? Like Levy's character. Man, everybody want to talk about life. Everybody want to talk about freedom. Man, that ain't got no style. Give me some Def. Now, Def got some style. Like Levy is like facing the reality, and you can kind of see in many ways, August Wilson beat the Afro pessimist to the punch. Like he did. Yeah, I really think there's an argument you can make that he did. And of course, it's the blues artists that allow him to do that. It's the everyday, ordinary people whose names didn't get put in record labels and didn't make. It was just this, these unnamed folks that W.C. Handy heard playing at a train station, right, and then wrote 12-bar blues because he had the penmanship of a composer and he could like rip it off, right? So, W.C. Handy oftentimes associated as being like the father of the blues, right? But they're talking about 12-bar, musically produced blues, right? That is always going to be like a facsimile of what we did in our, in our cultures in Mississippi and Louisiana and the Carolinas and Texas and other places. So maybe
what the vampire would have produced.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you could see W.C. Handy as a stack. I don't know. Like that's a stretch for me, but I feel like with your thesis, I think that would work. Yeah.
It wouldn't be the blues. It would be, his, the Irish vampire. If he had lived and taken it, it'd have been like, oh, he would have been trying to play.
Yeah. I hear you, man.
Well, thank you so much for coming on to have this conversation and to talk about this movie, your work, and the spirituality of music, man. Like, our music is like, they call it soul music. I love what you said when you were like, there's no difference between, there's no such thing as Black secular music, right? Like, I don't know what it is. The separation don't make sense. And it's right? Because
Ted might get mad at that though.
These kids.
I said, Aunt Ted might get mad at that.
Oh no, definitely, because that's also in the movie, right? That's also in the movie. Like, you can't be playing that blues now.
Yeah. Well, if you go back and look at the 1920s, I'll say this last one historical point. I'll let y'all know, right? Like if you go back and look at the history of the race record, right? In the early 1920s and 30s, you had the race record would cover like all Black genres, right? You would have like records of preachers, like preaching sermons, 2-minute sermons. And then you would have, blues artists and other artists, right? But then, there's this competition between the preacher and the blues musician, right? They're competing with each other, right? And so that competition, right, produces a kind of a narrative of where you can see the preacher not just being spiritually interested in the saving of souls, but getting butts in seat on Sunday morning by scaring them from coming to the juke joint and putting a offering in the juke joint plate rather than in the Sunday plate, right? Yeah. There's competition there. So I think that
that's what you spinning right there. That's right.
So there's an insider narrative. It ain't always spiritual what the preacher man be conjuring on Sunday morning. Right. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, man. But I appreciate the time. Thank y'all so much.
And yes, and I agree. Like, there's another whole layer of the movie that deals with the African music and culture and what it means, right? Like the church man might have been like, oh, you're doing the devil's music, right? Like when you're dealing with religion and we're dealing with African religion, they always try to make us think it's the devil. When it's not the devil, it's just who we are, right? It's part of our tradition, and it is the same. And the movie makes the argument that it's the same tradition, right? There's no difference.
Nah. Yeah, except if you initiated, then you might understand. Like Queen Mother was just giving us some dropping some jewels on there. Yeah, appreciate absolutely. You, Queen Mother. All right, y'all. Later on.
All right, man. And until next time, man. But we'll definitely have to have you on.
We got a blues man. You'll answer the ritual question.
Oh yeah, who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Man, I gotta go with Big Crit on that one, man. For right now, to represent Mississippi right now is Big Crit for me. And a close second would be Toby and Wigway right now, because of how he's how he's imaging Black family as a hip hop image.
Yes,
Black family as a hip hop image. That's a strong one.
I'm very conscious of that. I appreciate that too.
All right, later.
All right, take care, man. Peace. Hey, man. We have our next guest and our next segment on right now. This is going to be, and Zaid, you could introduce this segment. This is a much more serious segment about people who are doing like some serious work and saving lives within our community and what they are experiencing right now.
Well, actually, it's a continuum, and I didn't get a chance to sit on Mary Frances Berry talk about. Of course, I know her history quite well. Even had some battles with Professor Berry on a totally another. It was radio related, by the way, on a totally different front. But all of this is about the continuum of the life force, right? And one of the, this Erica, I just left our folks, right? I'm coming on late because I just left a 3-day symposium on Malcolm X, Frantz Fanon, and Patrice Lumumba,
Right.
and of course Dr. Fanon, doctor, psychiatrist, revolutionary psychiatrist in that conversation, and all of that is related. Let me try and frame this way. I'm very proud of who we have here in this conversation. These are the most driven, committed, powerful women that I know of their time, and I'm a bit older than all of them. Erica trying to sneak up a little bit. She just had a serious milestone herself, but I go back with her when she was quite young. We were all much younger back then, and we've come a long way. Speaking of Malcolm is the daddy of what we call credible messages in the landscape that is now known as community-based violence intervention. But there are, but all of them credible messages ain't men. There's some incredible women doing this work, coming from the same changes and same pains that us men folk do. And these three warrior queens are very special in their own right. Now, the trigger for all of this, and I'm using trauma language, right, metaphorically, is the lunatics in White House taking the Justice Department, shutting it down in the name of turning it on its head, and as a fresh weapon of the state in a turn towards fascism, instead of letting the Justice Department do what the Justice Department used to do and help people from not breaking the law and all of that kind of stuff, right? One of the things that the Justice Department did in the last administration, coming to terms with the pioneering dimensions and the life-saving dimensions of community-based violence intervention, is that it began to invest in it, right? And it leaned on a lot of the work even in our own community. The Office of Violence Prevention starts here in Newark, New Jersey, goes to Trenton, New Jersey, and goes to the Justice Department, right? And some serious resources and enhancements of the professionalization of this work came as a consequence of that. And then comes the November, I don't know if we should call it the November surprise or what, or the November madness and the advent of Mr. Lunatic getting his second go around with far more intentionality of turning things backwards than his first term. And one of those spaces he hit was all the investments that the Justice Department was doing in what we call community-based violence intervention. And really funky about this, and as it is about some of the other things that he's done, is that he has cut off funds meant to already go to work that were pre-assigned and pre-approved by Congress before his behind even came in, that he ain't got no business touching, period, whether he like it or not, right? So there's several levels of fight that are going on with this, and these are three voices that represent three spaces to give us a very full picture of that. right? Mona Cadena from Equal Justice USA, one of our leaders in Equal Justice USA. In full transparency, that's my leadership, right? Based in California, but one of our, Equal Justice USA is a national partner that helps organizations in different spaces all around the country, and very invested in work here in New Jersey, here and also in Louisiana, and as well as some other spaces, right? Erica Ford, one of my comrades from the December 12th movement, mighty December 12th movement, right? Was in the streets. We were all quite young, shaking down once upon a time Mayor David Dinkins, who was going to sell the Autobahn ballroom to Columbia University for $1. Remember that, Erica? Right? We ain't let that happen, right? And that's what saved the Autobahn, and that's what would later become the Shabazz Center and the reclaiming of Malcolm's legacy in a very profound way. But the fact that, lifting up the father of credible messengers, that is Malcolm, some rough sisters in front of that, like Olive Armstrong and Viola Plum. I want to put a pin in that, right? And then right behind that comes the glory and the story and the battles of the Million Youth March. If I talk about the Million Man March and the Million Woman March, we were battling in New York City with Rudolph Giuliani in the Million Youth March. Erica was our voice, was our person out front in New York for the Million Youth March. And Erica has parlayed all that she has gotten and all that she has given into becoming a pioneering leader in community-based violence intervention with her commitment to in the creation of something called Life Camp. And I'll let her get into that as we share this story out. And then my little sister wrote from JC, Jersey City, right? Tough old up South City, and like a lot of us, a survivor of police violence and gun violence, right? But turned her pain into some very important pathways for healing in her community when she created the Jersey City anti-violence movement, anti-violence coalition movement. I'm getting it wrong because your name is longer than our own name. And then just last week, just a few days ago, back to Jersey City, we have been trying to get something off the ground called the Seabrooks Washington Bill, or a push for getting properly resourced the creation and the development of community-led crisis teams to help our people in mental health crisis instead of the police coming to kill them when they need help, like they did to Najee Seabrooks, one of our CVI soldiers in Patterson, of the Patterson Healing Collective, and like they did to Andrew Washington, who already had a very clear and a well-known history of mental health challenges, and the bureaucracy and the backwardness and corruption of that town's elected leadership had $3 million sitting on the table and was supposed to do something with it and didn't do nothing with it at all. And everybody's still waiting for some money, right? So there's a lot to talk about. So this is a conversation that I wanted to have to help educate our community on just what this is, why it's important, why it needs support, and what our opposition is, and why it's so important for community to understand that there is more to public safety than calling the police. Calling the police has almost never meant safety for our community, right? And when we look at a city like Newark, and I'm going to use Newark just because it's convenience of having driven so much violent crime down, it was not the police that was responsible for the driving down of that violence. It was the emergence of a community-led, community-based violence intervention strategy that was reasonably well developed, that put in that work on that unseen, unheard, unappreciated, dangerous work on our streets that brought that down. And the time has come, we would dare say, that our community needs to be more understanding of it. We need to damn sure be more demanding of those who we put in office to invest in it in support of it. And so just that's big picture, right? And Mona, I'm going to come to you, in terms of setting the stage for the big picture. When I gave that description of what the Justice Department was a minute ago and what the Justice Department has become today, how does that look on the big scale, right? What do we say about, how do we break that down for folks that look like us but don't have all these words, right? And just hear those arguments back and forth between elected officials lying to each other and lying to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think even to put that inside even a little bit of a bigger bowl, right? What the administration is doing is they are moving fast and they are breaking things and they are working hard to achieve, I think, a transformation that basically turns the government's back on people. And to give a little bit more detail about the cut from last week, it was $800 million cut across the Department of Justice, and $150 million was that to support community violence intervention. And it came from two places, right? A bipartisan Safer Communities Act and another bill, both of which were signed into law and are supposed to be implemented, just like you said. And so, I think this $800 million cut, it comes on the heels of previous cuts to HHS, to the Department of Education, to USAID. And I think each cut is another way of the administration trying to stress test its own power, right? It will continue to roll forward and cut as much as it can, as long as it doesn't see any opposition, which I think, to your point of why it's so important for us to be loud and talk about why it is important for the administration to fund safety that doesn't center police. So that's sort of like the bigger, like that big bucket of where we are, and sort of kind of the big things I'm thinking about. But do you want to go to like break down what's happening in New Jersey in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, I want you to. I mean, you have seen how and I'm going to use the language, how this harm is harming our work.
Yeah,
with people who we work with. And then I like to actually lift up Louisiana, right? Yep. Because we've got some, really incredible upstream work that's been going on by one of our very cherished young organizers in Louisiana to give a good picture of that. And then of course, Erica and Pam can break that down for what that looks like for us locally.
Yeah, and to get very specific on what these cuts mean for Louisiana, we, as an organization, we're an intermediary. And so EJUSA has been able to fund 5 very small organizations, in some cases, organizations that did not have anyone paid up until we were able to start funding them to do work in their cities. And those folks are doing work across the state: Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Shreveport, Bogalusa, which, as you know, is the birthplace of the Deacons for Defense and Justice.
That's right.
And these organizations have had to stop doing work, in some cases immediately. Some organizations have had to, if they have staff, lay off staff. In many cases, people are paying for this money out of their own bank accounts because they thought that they were going to be able to move forward. People have plans. Events are being canceled. And I have to say the New Jersey Attorney General was very clear in what he said, is that what the administration is doing means people will die. And I think at the end of the line, at the bottom line, that is what's happening. People aren't able to get resources to move in the aftermath of violence. There aren't able to be as many resources out on the street to intervene in violence. And I think Pam and Erica can talk more specifically about what that work looks like. But what's happening is that life-saving work is stopping. And I think it's, as we sit at the cusp of summer, it's terrifying to think about what might happen if we continue to have resources come out of our neighborhoods.
But let me ask you this, Doc, because I should have did this first, and I want to do this for each of you, right? Because telling our stories is so important, right? and I lay it on you regularly how brilliant I think you are, right? And I don't want to embarrass you now, right? But I got in language of those considerably younger than me, you got to tell your origin story. What you with your skill set, each of you got skill sets. You can all be doing something very different with your lives, right? What brought you to this? And see, you come to this also dealing, coming from a long invested battle against the death penalty, right? And in all of our work, we're working from a framework of loss, of people dying, people being harmed, and trying to pick up pieces and trying to help people put their lives back together, right? What brought you to this?
Gosh, I think I think there are a lot of things that brought me to this, but early on, my father died by suicide, and I think from the very beginning as a kid, understanding, or at least even knowing in my bones, the way that a loss of even a violent loss like that it impacts bodies and minds and hearts. And from there, I really just started connecting and working with folks. A lot of my early work was around sexual violence and just accompanying people who had been harmed. And I can almost, it's not funny, but in some ways, like I started doing work to end the death penalty. And when I started doing it, I almost didn't have a deeper reason other than, gosh, this is terribly wrong. And then I found out about 15 years after I had been doing death penalty work that a relative of mine had been executed by the state of Texas. And my family didn't know. It was my mother, it was her great grandfather. She didn't know. My grandmother told me this story in whispers right before she died, and was very clear to tell me that how shameful it was and that we should never tell anyone. And suddenly it connected so many things for me around, one, like why I was so drawn to do work to end the death penalty, and two, just being able to see the impact of what that did to the family, and how much of my family didn't even know that story happened, and those that did just wanted to hide it away. And so it's like I was almost brought to it just by my own body and without even knowing why. And as I've gotten older, I've started to learn things about my family in the past that make it, I think, much more clear why I'm doing this work. And I lean into the understanding that as we've all said, the body keeps the score, and I think I find that is so true for me, just not just over my lifetime, but across generations. And so I think that's generally why I'm here.
Ancestors were whispering. And I was, my co-host is not on at the moment, but that's the thread that I was trying to get him to see in terms of how the conversations that are connected, that in terms of the different themes on the show today. Erica, I just picked you up in your intro, but a couple years ago we were straight worried sick about your behind, right? Because in all this work, and we come from this place of stuff that has happened to us and people we love, right? We come strong, in the first point of entry, we come strong, right? And but as over time, whenever we help someone going through the trauma of loss and whatnot, we also find ourselves carrying that trauma with us, right?
Going through the trauma of life. Forget about loss.
Right?
Every day was trauma.
Yeah. So when you start, when that started showing up on your body, it scared the caca out of us. We what's up? We knew what it was. Those of us that do the work, but we wanted to know. I mean, is she gonna be all right?
Yeah, I know. When I look back at so for those that, peace and blessings, peace everyone. Grateful to be here tonight with some powerful people and some people who really care about the work. one of the things that the sister said is that's why we have to fight. And if every day you wake up and you fighting, right, your body doesn't understand. The fighting alone has a stress on your body. If you're in constant fight mode, survival mode, angry mode, as Sister Kepper says, your set is coming up, you upset all day long, right? That's why Deepak coined me the angry peacemaker for a while, right? And that has a toll on your nervous system, and my whole nervous system shut down. And I was 100 pounds wet, right? I lost 62 pounds in a month. And so
now you were always lean.
Exactly. I had nothing to lose and lost. Yeah. And when I look back at the pictures, I'm scared of the pictures. And now I know why people were crying when they saw me, right? Because I look now at it and I look like I was dying. And that's why.
But before you got sick, I want everybody to appreciate how much work you put in.
I'm gonna get there. All
right, absolutely.
I started this work at 22 years old. I just turned 60 on the 8th of April. And it was, when you talk about I hate the boxes, right? I hate the criminal justice box and the gun violence box and the suicide box and the police brutality box. Like, we're all in a box, although we have to focus on different issues in different ways, and different ones of us have different, but like, we can't get into these boxes, right? And that's why one of the things that I pushed for in the beginning of doing this work is building an ecosystem, right? That we all have to do this together. We all have to reach out and raise money and pay each person to do their lane of work in a target area so that we can wrap all of our services that are needed in our oppression and the racism that we face on a day-to-day basis. So when we talk about what is happening now, it is a continuation of racism, right? We were once the ornaments hanging on a tree as slaves, right? We were what they came to see be killed and hung and crucified. And so now we were the creation of the prison industrial complex, right? We were the creation of the educational or miseducation system that drives us from school to prison pipeline, right? And so with the reduction of crime, with the peace is a lifestyle, with the numbers of young people filling their prison system, there's no business for them, right? So when we talk about things closing, understand what closed first, right? It's the prisons that close upstate. It's the prison that closed in these little towns, and sheriffs not having to justify to hire more people, and so on and so on and so forth. And so they had to change the tide, right? Like, we can't get misscrewed and think that we are out of oppression because we have someone who says or looks like us, right? We're not out of oppression. The system of oppression still exists, right? And so the whole conceptual idea of this man coming into office, he came in to continue a set thing of work. That's it, right? That's it. And we have to continue organizing. We spend trillions of dollars a year on stuff. I know you could go in my closet. I went upstairs just now. I didn't even know I had this, right? And so sometimes we and women, I'm not going to talk about our sisters, right? Because I know I shop a lot, right? And less intentionally, right? The reason why I wrote the Peace Doctor playbook, right, is because we have to shift how we wake up in the morning. We have to shift the intentionality of how and what we're putting inside of people so that they can carry the work forward. And what is the work, right? The work is that we have to be conscious of the society that we live in. We have to be conscious on where we put our dollars. We have to be conscious on what and how we are raising our children in this society so that they don't become a double-edged sword to themselves and victims in this society that we are living in, right? We cannot, and that's to me, right? We can't die over food. We can't call ourselves fighting against a system that is oppressing us and all of this stuff, and you dying because you want to eat some fried chicken or some Pepsi, right? It logically makes sense because we're unconscious of it. Like we conscious over here, but we totally unconscious over here. And so that's why the pre-morbidities, when COVID came, we were dying, right? We were dying. That's why when they say something else is coming and it's coming, right? Now, how do we get ready for it? Because if they're killing us over here, are we going to help kill ourselves over here? Right? And so it's more than just standing up and holding a sign and walking down the street and protesting. Who are you? How are you showing up? How are you leading people? What are you teaching people? What are you feeding people mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? Right? We got work to do. We got work to do. And so, Peace Doctor Playbook it's a tool. It's a tool with lessons and guides. One of the ones that I like the best, it says, just because the river is quiet doesn't mean the crocodiles ain't out there. Right? And so Biden and Kamala got people thinking that the crocodiles ain't out
That's
there.
the very Louisiana thing, Mona, right? We got to get Josie on it. Go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry.
But it is what it is. Like Biden didn't want to put the money that he put in. He put it, but he didn't want to put it. We had to educate him. We had to organize. We had to organize the CDC. We had to organize the DOJ. We had to educate. We had to work to get those things done. They didn't just happen. It didn't just happen. We did a lot of work.
Precisely.
We got Ambassador Rice on our side, right? And she started to be an advocate and a champion for us. And she carried the word. And the brothers and sisters in the Black and Brown Peace Consortium, which I'm a part of, the Fun Peace Movement, pushed $800 million. And we got the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention open. Greg and Rob and Stephanie and the rest of them, right? They followed the movement. They worked in conjunction with the movement of CVI, not the movement in general, but the CVI movement. And then, things were distributed and places were open, but there was no money when I stepped on this field.
Right.
CVI. It was not a dollar.
All of us stepped on the field. It wasn't no money. That was
they
we weren't even thinking about.
Didn't even want to pay attention in the 90s. When you talk about the Million Youth March, right? There was no, you can't pick up your iPhone and hit the IG and go live and tell, no, we have to go do work, knock on doors, talk to people, right? And that's what we got to go back to. Yeah. We got to go back to those living room conversations and them, the brothers and sisters who did it. And there's people who got money in our neighborhood, right? They got to reinvest and close the gap. Right? Whether it's Louisiana or Mississippi or St. Louis or Nashville, Tennessee or Newark or anywhere, we lost $2 million, right? They took $2 million from us, right? And so now we need our people to come back home and let's close the gap. Our Attorney General is having a meeting on Thursday with the Attorney General from California, the Attorney General from New Jersey, the Attorney General from Minneapolis, and the Attorney General from Illinois, right? At the SUNY Westchester Community College.
That's good to know.
From 6 to 8 on Thursday. And people should show up so that we can support these attorney generals in championing the whatever lawsuits and challenges and letting them know the number of people impacted, the death of people impacted across the United States, right? So that they could also be our champion in helping to get resources on the ground, right? There's many different ways that we got to take this battle forward. There's a National Day of Action on the 7th. Community Justice Action Fund is leading that with all of us, Amber and Jose and Greg and Anthony Smith and all of those folks. And so people could tap in, right? We have weekly calls, monthly calls, right? We all are coming together right now. Yeah. It ain't about no silos. It ain't about no ego, no judgment, no jealousy. We coming together right now because they together. They together. Lock, stock, and barrel.
And let me pivot and bring Pam into this conversation because, attorney generals are law enforcement. Some are better than others. Some are more authentic than others. Some are more enlightened than others. And we have a love-hate, relationship with our Attorney General, right? Governor Murphy, Attorney General Platkin were decent with the beginning of the putting out of some of this money for this work. We hit a wall, unfortunately, when we wanted to break this fresh ground around the creation of crisis response teams that were community led. So we're in a cat fight with them. We just want to be transparent about that, right? But it's just, and that's the give and take of politics and dealing with the state. But Pam, I wanted you to jump in here. But before we jump right into what we've been battling with in Jersey City and in Patterson and in those places where we're trying to get this working in our area, I want you to also tell your story, what brought you to the work, and what has kept you so driven to do this. Because we've done this under most of us start out of pocket volunteer spaces, had no idea in for the most part that we would ever be in a space where we can actually have investment into what we're doing, and that would go in that healthy direction that it's been going in. But once we started going in, and all of a sudden we get this, we're the interrupters. Why are y'all interrupting us? Get out of our way. So tell us your story that didn't break down Jersey City for a bit.
Sure. I'm so happy to be here, of course, anytime I'm with you guys. It's a very safe space for me, and I like to have safe spaces for mental, because the work and the bureaucracy around it will drive you nuts if you let it. And I'm so glad, Queen, that you're okay. I even took some notes down from what you were saying, like how are you teaching? How are you learning? Like, how are you taking care of yourself? And that's very important. So I'm glad to see you looking good. Okay. Hey, Mona. And so, what brought me to the work, I come from a family who just serves. My dad was born and raised in Sumter, South Carolina. He came here when he was 18 years old. The only family member to come here and make a life, met my mom. And they had 4 kids together, stayed together until he died for 30 years. And I think once I became a gun violence survivor, once I was shot myself, which was probably about 5 years after my father passed away, and just randomly, not for me, but still didn't, save me from becoming a victim, because they say bullets don't have no names on them, and that they sure didn't, because myself and 4 of my girlfriends were shot, along with the individual who he wanted to shoot. But thank God we all made it out okay. Some were a little more hurt than others, but we are all fine and still living to this day. So God has been good to us, and we thank him for that. And so I once I had my son and I saw the trajectory of my neighborhood in Jersey City as a whole, living in the urban area of Jersey City, and I just knew that I really had to involve myself with something else. I was always involved with homelessness and lifting that up in city council meetings, talking about housing, which is an issue. I don't think we'll ever talk about the lack of housing or affordable housing, right? It'll be an issue forever. And, just talking about various things. And I just was like, but people still being shot in my neighborhood and nothing's happening. And violence, gun violence is concentrated in Jersey City. I'm sure it is in a lot of other urban areas. Where it's going to happen at. And although police cars sit on those corners all day long with their lights flashing all day long, that has not prevented one homicide to continue happening on those corners. What it has done is it catches the shooter a little faster, but that's it. It doesn't prevent anything. And, in Jersey City, we were so reactionary to violence. It was all right, well, something happened. Somebody got killed. Somebody, there was just a shootout. 5 people got shot. And then everybody wants to do something. And it's well, what do you expect to do when somebody has lost their child already? You can't bring that person back. And so, we started this grassroots movement right here in Jersey City, underneath the current administration, who was just very not welcoming to admitting that there was unsafe neighborhoods in our city. It was we can't say that there are unsafe neighborhoods. Well, when you look at the map and when you look at where violence is, those red dots tell me where it is. It's already public information. We can lift that up and we can focus and target those neighborhoods so we can invest in them. And I think in a lot of cases that, the low performing schools are in those neighborhoods. The high incarceration rate, the low unemployment rate are in the schools. The high suspension rate, but the low graduation rates are in those neighborhoods. All of the low and high, not good stuff, are in those neighborhoods. Although those neighborhoods are occupied by amazing people who, if they had a chance, be doing amazing things. And so, although, we were grateful to Governor Murphy for being one to step out on something good. However, like, this is something that should have been done, right? This is something that should be maintained, and it's not. It's not. I am tired of fighting, but I won't stop. But it really becomes exhausting. And, although now, we have a full budget and we're able to hire folks from within those communities, it's still not enough. And so to even talk about cutting any of that funding is just disgraceful and disgusting, because it's not enough from the beginning. And it's like you have to fight the politicians, and then you have to fight in your neighborhood to convince people that we need help, or that they need help, or that what they're living in is not normal. It's dysfunction, and it's generational dysfunction. And so it's just like the fight. And then sometimes you got to fight against people who call themselves your allies, but they're secretly plotting behind your back to see how they can stop the force that you're moving with. And so I find, so I'm not gonna get up every day upset, because I'm listening to you, Queen, because at one time I lost a lot of weight too, and I was like, what is going on? And I remember going to the doctor, and he was like, well, everything is good. He was like, but let me ask you a question. How do you eat? Like, when do you eat? Like, do you eat breakfast? No. Why? I don't know. I'm just not hungry in the morning. Do you eat lunch? Well, most of the time when I was working in corporate America, I took my lunch to then work on my nonprofit in the office, in another office space, because I had needed a full-time job, but I wanted to do this community work. And then when I would go home, I would find myself in my community occupying a corner. So I literally was forgetting to eat. Literally. And when I remembered to eat, I would pull out like a granola bar, or like go to the corner store and get like a butter roll. So I wasn't eating, and I wasn't getting the nutrition that I needed, physically for my body, nor was I really getting what I needed mentally to stay focused on what I needed to do. So I was just like all over the place. And it was like chaotic, effective movement of some kind, because it was chaotic, but things were getting done, but I wasn't getting what I needed as an individual, which I then cannot give to my two children who are adults now. But when I started this, they were teenagers, and now I have two grandchildren. So I want to make sure I'm here. I thank God he just blessed me with a 51st birthday a couple of weeks ago, and my kids are 33 and 27, and I have two granddaughters, 8 and 3. So I want to be around, and I want to do more than just fight. And I have taught folks how to fight, and I'm going to teach them even better how to fight, because it's not the same fight that I stepped into in the late 90s. It's a totally different fight right now. So although we have made a lot of progress, there is still a lot to do. And I feel like as long as we keep talking about how much work there is to be done and never get complacent with the little trinkets that they give us, I think we'll be in a better space than we were, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. But that oppression and that racism, it's not going anywhere.
Yes. And one thing I want to refrain you from saying, Queen.
All right.
I have a full budget. You do not have.
We ain't never had no full budget.
That's right. Thank you so much.
None of us had that.
That's right. We don't. That's why we have part-time workers. Not enough.
And so we can't forget that New Jersey is expecting a $6 billion budget surplus this year.
That's right.
Nobody should be disinvested in the state.
That's right. And on top of that surplus, we got a governor who was very soft on corporations paying their taxes. So that $6 billion could even be more. And we could do a whole lot better in doing some saving lives and investing in communities and, making more housing that's affordable, available, and healthcare, all of that. Give me in my reclaiming of my imagination and $6 million, more or less $6 billion, we're going to get something done. We're going to go buck wild. I want to really, but just say to each of you, though, each of you are what we call, by virtue of you each being so driven, you're transcending figures in this that have transcended the limitations of the spaces and the confinement and the oppression that we all face. That doesn't mean that we human, and so it can come back and get on us. And each of you have described that has happened for you. But we got, before I come back to you, Pam, and we talk about Seabrooks Washington a little bit. Just a basic thing that I want to get out of each of you as a takeaway is that this stuff is sometimes hard to explain to our people. I mean, just the regular people that we know, people who live right next door to the people we just saved. It's hard to explain to our people sometimes. What in each of your respective walks, what can you say to this community of listeners, and they're from all over. The show has got its roots and its origin in Newark, but we got folks that follow us from all over the country, who are trying to figure this stuff out. That's why they check in. How do we explain the value of this and the fact that this work is not only life-saving, groundbreaking, has incredible professional dimensions, right? Has never been properly sourced, right? Could be a career for people who are usually, when they come home from spaces like being just as impacted, totally blocked out from any kind of meaningful living in terms of making a living because of that one box you got to check. Have you ever been convicted of that whole thing? What are some of the takeaways that you want to give to our people that just need to try and understand just what this is and why this is important a little bit? And Mona, I'll go to you first, so we just go round robin like we did before.
Whew, that's a big question, Baba. So at one, I think just on the money side, the money is there. And as to Erica's point earlier, where she talked about how, this administration is just here to continue the white supremacist plan from previous administrations is so true. And we know that it's possible to shake that money from the tree to fund the work that's happening on the ground. And so I think for me, one of the takeaways is every person has a role in building safety for our community. So whether it's doing advocacy, whether it's just checking in with your neighbor and asking how they're doing and making sure they got what they need for the night, all of those things matter as we move towards safety. Mm-hmm. So I would say, get up in the morning. The more we love each other, I think the more it'll lead us down both those advocacy paths and those community connecting paths.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What say you, Erica?
Violence is a disease. And the vicarious and direct trauma that our young people are exposed to leads them down a road, and then the inability to deal with that trauma, to have the tools and the resources to heal and transform. And then on top of that, I talked about the food desert, the food apartheid. All of the food that we eat brings out the demon in you. It doesn't give you life, it gives you death. It helps build diseases inside of you. And so you're always in a fight and a sick mode, right? You're never a healthy, true living being. And then you don't have the resources. So when you go back to the slave trade, right? We built America, but we weren't financially paid, right? And so there was a generation of people who were paid off of our labor that never went to us and our family. And so there was this imbalance, and this imbalance led to you needing to eat and satisfy your basic needs. And the only way you can do that, the business that they put into your community was drugs and guns. And so you're out trying to feed your family by the business that they put in your community. And then everything else comes. I remember in the 80s with the Black men's movement against crack, and right. And who are we? We're going to close the crack house because the crack epidemic took a hold of our community. Right. It took a hold. And then our children were taken out of our homes and put in the social services. And so families were broken up. men went to jail, people were killed, the children were in this another system of theirs that financially benefited a lot of people, not us, right? And so as they made money off of us, our children were, totally demoralized, given Ritalin in the morning, Thorazine at night, and all of those other drugs, and they became drug addicted. And then you have that thing, the 80s babies, right? Where these kids were now acting out in school, and from acting out in school, then they were put into this prison industrial complex.
The pipeline, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And all of this led to, we didn't just get here. Is what I'm saying, is we didn't just get here. This is a systematic and intentional plan to put us in a space and keep us in a way. And so, the police were brought in to protect property, not individuals. So they don't protect us, they protect property. That's what they were for. And so we always had community patrol, right? But one of the things that when I first went to the city around, I called it the VIP system at that time. It was a violence intervention and prevention system, because everybody wants to be a VIP, right? And so it wasn't just about taking a gun out someone's hand. It was about transforming that whole young person, right? And so we have lawyers. I made the city pay, we came out the gate with a budget, not a full budget, right? But they paid for the lawyers to work so that we can put their rights in effect as soon as they come in contact with the police. They paid for unconventional therapeutic services. So we started the Urban Yogis program. They paid for us to be in the school. And so we started the safe corridors in the schools and working with those high-risk individuals in the school to change the culture. They paid for us to go into the hospitals. And so we were in the hospital working with those families. So I'm saying that they paid us to pay those kids to come to the program and pay them to work, and so it is knowing who you are and what you need, and making sure that as a community, we are coming together with all of our resources to help save our children and give them the oxygen that they need to survive, right? And that's each and every one of us. In every household, if we knock, people knock to get them votes and sign them petitions, let's knock to be a community and save our children and reinvest in our community. When you go to another community, if you go past and you talk about Jersey City, right? You go down you can go many blocks in Jersey City, right? But the stores are different. The condominiums is different. The blocks, the big houses. Don't go over there in Bloomfield, right? Don't go over there, right? Or don't go to the Upper West Side, or don't go to the Hamptons or Garden City, right? Or, even in Louisiana, and all of them, cross Martin Luther King Boulevard. It's fun. It's different, right? And so at some point, we have to see the difference in our community and know that we have the power to make out, because we lived in luxury. They burnt Tulsa. Right? We walked in dignity in Harlem and every place. When you look at the history, we walked away. We talked away. We know who we are, right? And so what I would say is we got to go back to the essence of who we are. And we got to make sure our children understand who we are as a people, not a program, as a people. Peace, doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Pam, and then in the last few minutes that we have too, I want you to just break down what we're doing with Seabrooks Washington is, what that is, and where that needs to be, and then we wrap up. It's been powerful, y'all.
I'm smiling so bright. And for one, it's a safe space for me always, but it's always a beauty and just a wonderful thing to be around some strong women. Queens, I love y'all. It's beautiful. And so I think I'm gonna lift up, what Mona said, what Mrs. Erica said. Like, when you talk about love, Mona talked about straight up love and checking on your neighbors and being a part of this dynamic thing that we're forming, this brotherhood, sisterhood, this movement, right? And I'm always speaking from love, and I tell so many people that I love them all day long, people that I don't even know, and I hug so many people. And I always pray, you know, that God is blessing me to hug the right people, so the energy is always good. And so far, so good. And then to talk about the history of our people, you know, as the Queen did, to talk about where we were as people, who we are as people, what really got us here in this predicament, and making sure that we educate as many young folk as possible so they know where we came from, so they know how we need to stand with our heads high, get involved, and be a part of that change that you want to see in your community. You might be a part of something negative in your community, but I know you would love to see goodness and beautification and light, and not be ducking bullets in your own community. Right. And so, you know, like with me, I think all of that means so much. I just want to add to that. I know, like, growing up, I always heard like phrases like, this too shall pass, or where there's rain, you know, the sun will shine. And those are beautiful things. But we are and have been in a reoccurring storm, and it don't stop. And so, you know, my thing is that the storm, although I love what you said, and I wrote it down, that the river is quiet, but the crocodiles are swimming. No matter how good things are looking, sounding, appearing, we are in a storm that has not stopped. And so the work that we do to curb that storm and keep it from knocking down the door, you know, we want to, hopefully one day we can get it from by our door, but to keep it from entering, you know, that's what we are. And I think the more we come together as a people and stay on their necks, because that's what we're doing too. We're putting our foot down, standing 10 toes down, and say, no, it's not going down like that. And so that's what I do love about this whole movement that is happening. And it inspires me to stay in the game and keep my head up. You know, although it was a very tumultuous week, I think I cried every day except today, about the verdict. And I don't want to start crying either about the not verdict, but the no bill, you know, decision that the grand jury came across with. And, you know, I remember watching, you know, Najee and his case roll out. You know, that's in Patterson, but that's our family. You know, we're sisters and brothers in this, and we paid close attention. And, you know, we watched the same body cam that they watched, and I just don't understand. And also in Andrew Washington's case, I don't understand, but I understand. And that just, like, it sounds crazy, but I do understand, but I don't, and I never will, because that means that I've become complacent to the BS that they give us, and they expect us to swallow it. So instead of swallowing it, we will continue to fight. And, you know, thank God, King, because, like, and everybody, Aaliyah, Mona, everybody who is a part of it, right? Because I kind of shut down a little bit, and I had to get inspired by reading all the messages and all the action that we were sad, but we took action as a coalition, and then demanded others to sign on our letter and take further action, especially if you are a legislator. And so I think that movement, and then getting our regular folks involved who may not be occupying a corner with me, but they tired of the nonsense too, and tired of feeling helpless and just like you're nothing. And so, you know, then advocating for them, like, listen, baby, this is what happened, and this is what we have to do collectively as a unit. And then just kind of lifting up our brothers who lost their lives simply because they were having, you know, an episode, and their family called for help, and they did not receive help. They were murdered. And so, you know I saw Mayor Baraka's statement. I've been following it. I read back the messages in our group chats and in WhatsApp, because I'm like, you got to stop crying, girl. Yeah, my eyes was swollen for 3 days on, you know, you got to stop crying, and and it's not that you have to stop crying, but don't just cry. So I like laid down when they told me, you know, I got the call from the OAG, and I asked them, did the family know? And they told me that they informed their attorneys, and their attorneys had let them know. So I grew up with Andrew's family. So I immediately called Tony, you know, just to be a voice. And
Tony's been on the show too, by the way.
Yes.
And I was trying to get her on with us tonight. Yeah.
Yes.
And,
and I called Tony, and I'm just like, and I waited like an hour, almost 2, because I'm like, just want to make sure they really know. You told me they know, but let me just wait. And I'm just like, yeah, I talked to the OAG a little earlier. How you doing? And she's like, what happened, Pam? And what happened? What you mean you talked to the OAG and how am I doing? And I said, oh my God. And that just made it even more terrible that I had to tell her what happened. And she had to then relay that to her family. And so the lack of transparency, first of all, the judgment from our public safety director and our mayor for the first thing they did, probably within 30 minutes, was say that the officers were justified.
Right. No investigation, none of that. Just right away or right out the hip. Playbook, protect the police.
And the part that they played. Because you can't tell me that their messaging that they put out right away did not have some people automatically thinking, oh, well, yeah, they were justified. They were justified. Oh, yeah, they were justified. So now you got to get a grand jury of people who didn't see the mayor and the public safety director say that they were justified already. I don't care how much they say they didn't do it. They didn't see it. You saw it or you heard about it. It was public. Like, it was terrible. They don't even hold press conferences for shootings around in our neighborhood. So I'm happy at what we're doing and the direction that we're going in to make sure that we lift these kings' names up and we make sure that they do right, A law and a bill is cool. It's good. Looks good on paper for them. But the actual work behind it to make sure that this doesn't happen again, it hasn't been done. And we have to make sure it is. So I'm gonna stay healthy and well and strong and make sure that I can continue this fight and teach others how to do so as well.
Right on to that. And I'm proud of each and every one of you. Before I ask you the ritual question, if there's anything that you want us to particularly share about your given march, your given line, Mona put in the chat the webpage that was created for the united efforts that are around trying to save some of this money. Okay. I'll put ours. Erica, I want to remind you, I want to bring you into Newark as a part of a series of what I'm calling Malcolm-centered book signings, right? For your book, and then Pam, we got to pull this. We got a press conference to pull together.
Yes, we do.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and I really appreciate each of you, beyond words. I usually have this is usually a panel of co-hosts, all coming from different places, and it's we be winging it sometimes, right? But so I'm just going to take the liberty of just asking you the basic question, and I think y'all probably heard it with the last, our last guest that came on before you. This is actually a hip hop political talk show, right? I got as much hip hop in me as my my pinky nail, right? I'm like Mary Frances Berry. I'm dyed in the wool jazz, right? I'm a jazz poet. When I walked in the radio land, I had a jazz show, but that was the other end of my generation that took jazz in the 21st century, the same generation that gave birth to hip hop. We just went 2 different directions. But having said that, to each of you, and I'll start with you, Mona, in the land of hip hop, who's your favorite artist or group, or who do you listen to, or who are your go-tos when you need some motivation or some inspiration?
I like Slick Rick a lot.
That is a storyteller king right there.
Yes. All right. All right. Erica, what say you, comrade?
Mic check, 1, 2. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. No. So I have Nipsey behind me. I got Tupac over there, and I got DMX over there. And then I am the paprika of Salt and Pepper. right? So I'm gonna just leave it right there because I can't pick because
Hey, remember Salt Pepper helped us during the Million Youth March.
That's right. That's my girl. I'm the Pepper.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love it.
Pepper used to live right up the block.
Right, right. What say you, Pam?
So I'm a big Tupac fan, always, like a big one.
Always.
And I definitely play his music for motivation. If I need to get really like gully a little bit, I mean, although Tupac got that gully, but he was also a poet and so many other things, right? Just amazing. But 50 Cent can put me in a mood that I need to be in to face King Kong and Godzilla. Like he does that. He does that. 50 Cent, he does that.
He's making a whole lot of money with them damn TV shows he got. That power.
I know, right? And he's smart. Yeah.
They killing that stuff.
For real. So yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, look, I'm proud of each of you. We're working together. Absolutely. Y'all trying to get some love and some peace and some coolness, on your heads and on your bodies over this weekend. Because Monday we back at it, and then some of us, we at it. It comes, whether it's weekday or weekend, we got to get at it.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. But get the love you deserve, get the peace you deserve, get the healing you deserve, get the rest you deserve. We need you. All right. Appreciate you.
All right. We need you too, King. Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Right on.
Love y'all.
Love you. Have an amazing weekend.
Likewise, Queens.
All right, Queens. And Kings. He's back, Jonathan. Bye.
Take care.
The founder, the taskmaster.
Hey, yeah, I had to step away for a little bit, but I'm glad I missed part of it. It seemed like it was really good. I wanted to jump in at the end, but I didn't want to start asking questions that have already been asked and stuff like that. But it seemed like it was a really good set.
You didn't want to do it, Donna.
A great segment. All right, that's cold, man. That's cold. She's not even here to defend herself.
Yeah, we missed it.
Not even right. Not even.
Okay,
not right.
They shouted out Pam. I didn't get a chance to tell her that.
Yeah.
They're both from Jersey City.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, DJ
Rhino
man,
has returned. Rhino, ride.
What's going on?
Hey, man.
We want you to tell us.
Yes, because
Look at what he geared. Look at what he wearing.
Oh, okay. The 45. I don't know what that is.
When I grew up, there was 45. The spindles for the 45 records, and then there was the 45 heater that some of us used to carry.
Right. It looks like I got a halo on in the background.
Yes, sir.
Just the lights. I was like, if I'm put in the right place, I'm like, I'm an angel, right? I got a little halo around.
Rhino,
especially after talking about sinners.
Where I grew up, we had 2 and at times 3 record stores within 5 blocks. And I ain't talking about big city stuff. I'm talking about St. George Avenue, Roselle, Linden in the early 70s, right?
Oh, wow.
And I stayed in them stores every Friday. I got me something.
Oh, man.
I had a 45 collection that was out of this world. And of course, when I got in the streets, my first weapon was 45.
Wow.
Right.
That's because
45 to 45.
They were in the streets. That was a street weapon.
See, the only one I remember back in the days, besides stuff like the Wiz and Blazing Sounds, I remember Blazing Sounds was downtown, but remember Moving Records?
Oh God, that's
Moving Records, man. Moving Records used to have too.
Yeah. So what's happening? Tell us. Bring it. You got a lot.
I'm just I'm really trying to catch up myself. I didn't really have enough time to prepare anything, but I heard the sisters. And I know one of the sisters mentioned Salt and Pepper. And, Salt and Pepper and Outkast are being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay, I knew about Outkast. I didn't know about Salt and Pepper.
Salt and Pepper.
Yeah, Salt and Pepper too. Yeah. Both of them are being...
I was actually pleasantly surprised to see Outkast going in. But go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not surprised to see Outkast going.
Okay.
I'm not surprised to see Outkast. Outkast was... it was the group. It was amazing when people thought about them coming back. Everybody was like, "Oh, he's coming back with a new album." It's like, "But I'm playing the flute," and everybody's like, "What?"
Yeah,
They're like, "But I'm
Gotta
playing
play.
the flute," and everybody went and they checked out the flute album because they wanted Outkast to come back.
Flute
They were
album was
like,
dope too. I used to go to sleep to that album, man, because it's a nice like meditation album. You know what I mean? We just kind of relax. You know what I mean? You don't always need the beats and the rhymes and all that. Sometimes you just need the vibes.
And on the strength of who they are and were, you know, folks who, you know, ain't nowhere near those kind of journeys decided to go on those journeys with them and actually got something out of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And then on top of that, and then on top of that, you know, Zaire, earlier you were talking about how, you know, jazz influenced hip hop, and that's proof of it right there. You know what I mean? Right. Like when you have a hip hop artist basically doing his own jazz in a sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's
Andre 3000 is definitely the descendant of a blues man.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
You know, when the news went out that they were getting the induction, you know, of course the famous clip went viral again of back in '95, the Source Awards, when he said the South got something to say. You know? Yeah, that's been spreading all around again. You know what I'm saying? Because now you look at what's happening now. They're getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it's like, the South has something to say.
I had a lot to say.
Yeah.
I had a lot to say.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
So
and it's funny because they really defined the kind of like middle class, eclectic, hippie kind of thing that Atlanta's kind of known for. Like Atlanta's black people are kind of like bohemian a little bit, right? They got they're into a lot of different things. They were probably the first to get into veganism,
right?
Yeah,
healthy spiritual eating, right? Like they just defined like the vibe of Atlanta incredibly well.
Yeah, and Atlanta had a great movement, man, for hip hop down there too. You know, New York just had to eat that up, man. You know, you know what I'm saying? yeah. Up north just had to eat that up, man, because down south, man, Atlanta was killing it for a long time.
Right.
Atlanta's still standing strong. You know?
Well, I mean, Atlanta's still strong, and ironically, it seems like every other region of the country is strong except for New York.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like New York doesn't.
That's the monster, Jonathan.
New York is still trying to figure it out.
You said what? What did you say?
That's a mic dropper. Yeah, that's a mic dropper. What you just said.
Yeah, I mean, some people are like
New York was the floor for what is and what becomes hip hop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, some people said it's gentrification.
Now, but it's present to take
hip hop couldn't afford.
That's a mouth.
Some people say it's gentrification. Hip hop couldn't afford to live in New York anymore.
Yeah, that too. But yeah. But I mean, really,
Harlem and Brooklyn still got soul, but it ain't quite the same.
Yeah, well, I mean, hip hop has been gentrified, but the hip hop has been gentrified for a long time as far as New York hip hop, like underground hip hop.
Yeah,
that's been gentrified for some time. I'll say since the mid to late '90s, it's been gentrified. But New York right now it seems like they're just trying to find their identity, their sound again. And what's funny is that if New York started hip hop, you would think the original sound for New York would be boom bap, but people treat boom bap like that's a pastime, like that's a dated sound. Yeah. People treat boom bap like it's a dated sound, but that was New York sound, was boom bap.
Right.
You know? Yeah, so right now, New York is struggling a little just to get their identity back, strong and confident,
It's like Jay-Z can drop but so many albums.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think, that Jonathan? What do you think about the artist that Rufus lifted up?
Oh, I'm not familiar. Right, Big Crit.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with him at all either. But you know they were from down under.
Yeah,
this is how he's rolling.
Right. From Mississippi. No, I was gonna check them out.
Yeah, I know Big Crit was definitely one of the conscious brothers from down south too.
Right.
And he was rolling with David Banner as well.
Yeah, David Banner was from Mississippi. Was David Banner from Mississippi too?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I got to check him out. I think I might have listened to him because they're conscious from the South. I probably have listened to him because I listen to David Banner a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, they got some stuff. Also, you know, Wu-Tang's got an album out right now. I didn't even know that it was already out. I kept hearing the news that they were working on something. They were going to drop something, but from what I understand, it's out right now. It's called Black Samson, the Bastard Swordsman, and it's produced solely by True Mathematics of Wu-Tang. And yeah, I haven't heard anything yet. I have to listen to it and check it out. But that's still huge news. You know, Wu-Tang coming out.
Yeah,
but,
it's true.
Yeah.
And they're not selling it for $1 million to one person.
Right. Right. So yeah, I have to dig into.
Wait, is this their first album since 2014?
This is their first album. Let's see. Since 2014.
Wow, I didn't know that they had made.
Well, they did of Mics and Men in 2019. They had The Saga Continues in 2017. Yeah. Then Once Upon a Time in Shaolin 2015, A Better Tomorrow 2014.
Yeah, that's still a minute. That's a minute. It's still 19 is a minute.
Yeah, definitely.
That did just the COVID too. Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to talk about this next week.
Yeah, because I definitely gotta check that out. A lot of people are dropping albums. Smith & Wesson also dropped a new album called Infinity, and that one is solely produced by Ninth Wonder. So that's real interesting because Ninth Wonder has always been dope. Speaking of boom bap, he's always been like a boom bap producer to me. You know what I mean? He's done stuff for Rhapsody. He's done stuff for Little Brother, but he's always had like his style of production has always been kind of boom bap to me. And some of the vibes also can blend into neo soul as well because he's got that vibe as well.
Yeah, he does. He actually did this dinner party with Robert Glasper and
dinner party with Terrence Martin, right?
Terrence Martin, Martin. That was excellent.
Yeah, I love that album.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So definitely look out for that. It's called Infinity. That's Smith & Wesson, produced by Ninth Wonder.
Okay.
I'm trying to see what else. I feel like somebody else dropped something. I know.
Ninth Wonder is brilliant. I think he's underrated. I think Ninth Wonder is underrated.
Yeah, and you know, and he's a professor at Duke. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Teaching hip hop studies. Yeah, and he's been doing that for years now. Yeah, he's been doing it for some time now. So big ups to Ninth Wonder. Nas, I know Nas is working on something. He's working on a new album with Primo, with DJ Premier. But what he's also doing right now, he's this summer he's supposed to be locked in his residence in Las Vegas with the Philharmonic out in Las Vegas.
Oh, that should be just interesting.
Yeah. You know, he's
having fun. Nas is having fun.
Yeah, Nas is. He's really having fun.
He must have released like 5 albums in 5 years, right? At least.
Yeah, and then he did the thing. What was it? Last year or the year before with the orchestra.
Oh no, man! He did a lot more than that. He's been releasing since 2018, right? He did the first King's Disease in 2020.
3 parts with King's Disease.
Magic 3 parts.
Yep. Yeah, he's been busy, man. Just doing what he wants, man. He's at that point where he's free to just
make music he wants to make.
Yeah, that's a beautiful
the music he wants to make, and he's still talented enough to be able to rock stuff. And you're like, yo, this is some of his best stuff. Like I actually think that the stuff that Nas has released in the last 5 years has been some of his best stuff.
It really has.
And I'm just like, yo, you making like only reason why it's not a classic is because you not new, right? Like Nas not new, right? But and so it doesn't get the hype. He's just putting it out there. It's like I think people are gonna find Nas again. I think that maybe in 5 years people are gonna be like, yo, this wave of Nas in 2024 and 2023 and 2022, like what happened? Right? Why did people sleep on it?
Right. Yeah, man. And when you listen to an orchestra actually play out those Nas classics, it gives it kind of gives it that dynamic where like what you were just talking about. It makes you recognize how classic those songs really are. You know what I'm saying?
Have you seen it in that setting? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah,
he did it. I think it was last year or the year before. He did that with the live orchestra, and he was doing all man, and it was beautiful, man. Just yo, I remember at one point, man, it actually did bring a tear, man, because I'm like, yo, this is Nas, you know, before Illmatic, man. You know what I'm saying? When he was doing Back to the Grill Again and Live at the Barbecue and you know, and Halftime and all of this, and then he drops Illmatic and like, look where he's at now, man. You know what I'm saying? And then to hear those classics being revered in that way, you know what I'm saying? It was a beautiful thing, man.
Okay.
It was a beautiful thing, yeah. So he's doing it this summer with the Las Vegas Philharmonic. That's his residency over there.
So question.
What's up?
In the Spirit of Sinners, have you seen it?
Yes.
Because Sinners is the spirit of hip hop, right?
Yeah, I saw it twice. I saw it with the family, and then I took my mom yesterday to see it again.
Well, let me ask each of you before he answers this, right? Mm-hmm. If you're going to see it, should you see it on your screen in the privacy of your own room, or should you see it in theater?
Definitely see it in theaters. I wasn't lucky enough to catch it on IMAX because that's what I heard. It was really made for IMAX theater. I wasn't lucky enough to catch it. I think around here it was only like for the first week or two where they had it in IMAX theater, and then they moved it on. But
I heard they're bringing it back this weekend and next week. They're bringing it back because everybody's like, "Yo, we want to see this in IMAX." So IMAX is bringing it back. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I hope they do because I haven't gotten to see it in IMAX, but I saw it twice already. And yeah, man, it's a powerful flick, man. It's a powerful flick. And
I saw it once, and I saw it once in a. It wasn't the IMAX, but it's an IMAX theater. But it wasn't like there are 8 theaters apparently around the country where it's meant to be seen.
Yeah.
And then there are the regular IMAX theaters. I saw it in IMAX, and it was nice because you saw the difference, and you know the big, because it looks like a Western sometimes, man. Like he's got this Western feel to it.
Right.
That's good. Like Coogler got this off right with it's just a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah.
And then it's deep on a bunch of other levels, and gets you into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know. And the way that it just weaves in like a layered look at dealing with white supremacy in a way that's like popcorn heavy, fun action, and great music. And then for the geeks of us, right? For those of us who like literature, it's a literary movie.
Right.
It's a movie that you can see it twice, 3 times, 4 times, catch things you didn't catch before, and have detailed conversations about it, right? Like I talked to Dr. Rufus Burnett about it earlier, and we could have gone on for another hour talking about the film and breaking it down. So it's something that like English teachers love. I compared it. One of our viewers was like, "This is way deeper than Kendrick Lamar," and I agree. It's way deeper than the halftime show. But the thing that it has in common with it is that English teachers love it, right? Like the halftime show is something that will be talked about for years. And was talked about right afterwards for like everybody had that opinion on the halftime show, and they broke down different parts of it. It was made for like textual getting into it and having a deeper conversation. This movie is both a fun movie, right? As in like it's just a cool movie, right? Beautifully done, great music, but it's also one of those movies that you could take apart, right, for a long time.
Yeah. And I feel like it does have a connection to what Kendrick was doing at the halftime show. You know what I'm saying? It has the same messaging, but even deeper. You know what I'm saying? It still has the "not like us" message.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It has that deep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
And I even love the message. You know, one of the messages that, because there's so many messages, so many things that you can get out of this. But you know, when everybody kept telling Sammy to put down the guitar, you know, he didn't want to put it down, and it made sense for him not to, because it was almost, when you see what happens throughout the movie and see how, you know, where he is in the end, it's like, this guitar got me through a lot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not putting this down.
Like a lifeline.
Yeah.
And like someone hit me, like another word, like bluesmen used to call the guitar their axe.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah. You can use it as a weapon, you know.
Right.
Which he did in the movie. You know?
And that's his axe, right? Yeah. So it's a good film on so many different levels. That if you haven't seen it and I spoiled it for you, you know, you were late anyway, right? Don't blame me, blame yourself, blame your lazy self. You should have gotten out and gotten to the theater and seen that a long time ago. And they're like, oh, you spoiled the movie, you spoiled the movie, you spoiled your own self for not going to see the movie when it came out. Everybody been talking about the movie.
Single soul who has seen it that has everybody who I've heard who has seen it has had some good to say about it, and that's rare.
Yeah. Because
And
it's so many things. It's so many.
When it first popped out, I said it's a vampire movie. I said, "Oh man, let's get out of here." But then,
and that's the thing. Like, I never was into vampire movies. Like, never. But when you watch this, it's definitely more than just a vampire movie.
Yeah, definitely, right? Because like I think I broke down on the other when we were talking to Dr. Burnett. I was like, yeah, when I was breaking it down, and I was like, yo, these vampires, they're white liberals, right? Like, they're the ones who are like, hey man, come here, we got this great contract for you, right? We'll make you a star, right?
That's what that part reminded me of. Reminded me of the record labels, the music industry.
Yeah. I was like, so there's some humor in this as well, right? Like there's levels of like, your stuff was so spiritual, man. Like, how would you want to get in touch with it too, right? Oh man, like, and so when they bite you, they get your catalog.
Yep. And he said it. He said that too. He was like, I want your music, I want your songs, I want to, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, wow.
Right, because they get all the memories and all. Right.
Yeah.
So it's literally, I get your intellectual property.
Right.
I get your catalog. Right. I get your publishing.
Exactly.
We ain't got none of it. Right. I'm gonna bite you. I'm gonna get it. Right. Because we talked about it before, and one of the coldest scenes is when the people are inside and outside watching this Irish thing get funky. Right, it goes from being like little Irish, right, to be like don't, right. Because the more black people they got, the more soulful the song got, right.
It's true.
And it gets funky, right, like downright funky and spooky at the end, because you're like, yo, oh, so that's what I'm saying. It's just it was just such a fun film, right? And again,
and even the fact that
you should have seen it earlier. Don't blame nobody but your lazy self.
And even the fact that you forget, man, like you forget real quick that's Michael B. Jordan playing against himself. Like he's playing, you know what I'm saying? Like you forget about that because they do it so well. They put it together so well. It just looks like you watching two dudes. And
let's be real, Michael B. Jordan acted as but like so Michael B. Jordan has been one of my favorite actors since Black Panther, right? Because like when he did Black Panther, I was like, yo, this was like he should have got an Oscar for that.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was the best Marvel character villain.
Yeah.
Right. I mean I was like, way to represent Newark, my brother, way to represent Newark. And when he did this, I'm like, I said back then when he played Killmonger, I was like, at some point he could drop the B and people will know we're talking about him. He could be like Michael Jordan and be like, oh, Michael Jordan, right? Like, so you might not need the B,
right?
Right? Because to differentiate himself, because we'll be talking about him, right?
Right.
But in this film, man, like, I mean, he is too. You absolutely forget that he's two characters in this film. Like totally forget. Like who's on the screen at all times. Right. And it's not just because it's color coded. My man worked on the spatial expressions. He worked on like movement, the way he moved his mouth, right? Like everything about he just does it. So they're different characters. So I appreciated that too.
Yeah, man, definitely. I love that movie, man. It was really good. Really good.
Well, I think we're reaching that time. I think we reached that time a little bit.
Yes, sir. I just want to tell the people. Oh, it's crazy. I got my mic on.
I like the mic though. The mic is good.
Yeah, I got this.
This is better. Your sound is better now than it's ever been. Yeah, I like the mic.
But no, I was gonna say that tomorrow at 3 p.m., maybe earlier. I might start maybe 1 p.m. We'll see. But tomorrow I'm going on for James Brown. Tomorrow's James Brown's birthday.
He's been in my head, and that's I guess that's why.
May 3rd, May 3rd, we're gonna.
Yeah, that's right.
We're gonna get into some James tomorrow.
So Michael B. Jordan, Creed, Rocky franchise, Rocky 4, Living in America, James Brown. It all connects.
Living in America is the least of what he did. That's
But
the
there's a
only
connection.
place he lost. And I'm like, oh man.
But James Brown. Yeah, we're gonna celebrate James Brown tomorrow. So check me out. That's twitch.tv/Rhino CMZ tomorrow, somewhere between 1 and 3 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So want to thank all of our guests that came on tonight. We had just an incredible show, and we appreciate all of our guests. Thank you to Dr. Mary Frances Berry, civil rights legend, when she was introducing her new book, Slavery After Slavery, revealing the legacy of forced child apprenticeships on Black families, from emancipation to the present. I mean, that's just an amazing segment that people should read. I mean, people should go back and see if you missed it. When she talked about like after slavery and how the kids were taken legally from their parents and made to work on plantations, and using a lot of the same language that parents are unfit, and using all the language to just rob Black people, right? And what that meant over time. There was some reparations conversation with that as well. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Dr. Rufus Burnett, author of Decolonizing Revelation, a spatial reading of the blues. We appreciated having him on because he was helping us break down the movie Sinners, because in blues and stuff, and that was excellent, right? Then of course the Mona Cadena of Equal Justice, Erica Ford of Life Camp, and Pam Johnson of the Jersey City Anti-Violence Coalition movement.
Incredible
Thank
women.
you.
Each dearly, yes, incredible women.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, and this would be my last word. Mary Berry, her book on Callie House, My Face is Black, is an important piece. Callie House was actually our first modern political prisoner. She was the bridge from the 19th century to the 20th century on the question of reparations. She was a hell of an organizer. She really shook some folks up, and they used the playbook that was used to frame Marcus Garvey was first played out on Callie House. So I appreciate the book that she did on Callie House. May 17th is a part of Malcolm Centennial's, a national rally for reparations in D.C. that I have to speak at. So I take Callie House with me everywhere I go when it comes to reparations.
The leader of the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief, Bounty and Pension Association. One of the first organizations to campaign for reparations for slavery in the United States.
Thousands. In the hundreds of thousands. Some accounts that she had as many as 600,000 paid dues members into that association. And we wasn't supposed to be coming off plantations rolling like that. And then them white folks, they came after her for that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, man. And we will see you all next week. And until then, be safe, be careful. Peace.
Peace.
Don't stop.